Father, we gather today. We have the opportunity to listen and hear about Finney County. You've given us so many gifts, and yet we still ask for more. And in this particular time, we ask for that little more moisture. But help us today listen with an open mind and use your guidance to make the best decisions for the people of Finney County. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Well, good morning. We're glad to have you with us this morning, and another nice, warm summer day. I guess official start of summer is tomorrow, maybe, and we've had a preview here the last couple of weeks, so it's kind of interesting. First of all, I want to, with regard to the chair's comments, I want to mention Dwayne Drees is absent today because of taking care of his livelihood with the wheat harvest, and so we said that was probably a logical reason to be absent. I want to also take this time to thank Paul Resley and all the firefighting units that we had a week ago today for the wildfire that we had in northeast Finney County. And even though it covered a number of acres and was started by the header on a combine, it was controlled, but we had air and land, and we had farmers and a lot of people involved in that. So, Paul, thank you for your coordination of that, but we really appreciate everybody who was involved in putting out that fire. And then the other thing I want to mention is I was remiss in thanking some people at the dedication ceremony, the unveiling ceremony we had Friday for Russ Jennings. One of those, and unfortunately he's not here in the room today, but Larry Brungard at Public Works put in a lot of time and effort, and I failed to mention his name the other day. It was brought to my attention after the ceremony, so I very much went over and apologized to Larry for not recognizing him publicly Friday. But Larry is one of those somewhat behind-the-scenes workers that just gets it done every day, and he got it done again, helping with the ceremony. And lastly, I failed to thank the city people who were involved in not only bringing the flag, but if anybody wanted to see the cooperative effort that we have here in Finney County, they needed to be there during the teardown of the chairs and so forth after the ceremony. I mean, everybody, including the police chief and others, just jumped right in and helped get those chairs taken care of, and it was a great visual of how we cooperate, and nobody even asks for people to step in. They just simply do it, and that's what Finney County is all about. The last thing is with regard to our agenda. We may or may not have the executive session that's on our agenda. That's still in limbo on whether that's going to be needed. So as we get closer to that time, we may, in fact, delete that from the agenda, but for now, we're going to leave it on because it is still a possibility. Any other items from the board with regard to the agenda? If not, we'll move on to the consent agenda. You have a number of items on that consent agenda. What's the board's desire with regard to those items?
I move we accept the consent agenda as provided.
Second. It's been moved and seconded to approve the items on consent agenda. And all in favor of that motion, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion passes. Public comment is for anything that's not on our agenda, and we always ask to keep those comments relatively brief and respectful. Is there any public comment this morning? Not seeing any. We'll move on to the business items. And Dave, I'm going to let you spearhead the next discussion, and I think we have the Honorable John Wheeler, representative of the state of Kansas for Garden City, present for this part of the discussion.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have very little to do with this other than I was a recipient of a phone call from Representative Wheeler stating that he had a framed copy of the resolution that he had the honor of reading at the House of Representatives. And he wanted to present a copy of that to the Russ Jennings Correctional Complex for display. And so I suggested that John get a hold of our county clerk and let's get it on the agenda, and either by motion or by resolution, that way we can make that a permanent display. So as you'll see before you, a resolution to display that, and that's the action we need to take today. And so.
So with that, Dave, let me read the resolution that we have in front of us for our consideration. It's titled Resolution to Display the Kansas House Resolution Number 6026, honoring Representative J. Russell Jennings. And it is, whereas the Board of County Commissioners of Finney County, Kansas has determined that the memory of Representative J. Russell Jennings should be honored on June 17, 2022 through ceremony and the naming of the Finney County Correctional Complex in his honor. Whereas the Kansas House of Representatives honored the House of Representatives honored the memory of J. Russell Jennings by adopting House Resolution Number 6026. And whereas the resolution is a fit and proper recitation of Representative J. Russell Jennings' legacy to Southwest Kansas and to Finney County, now therefore be it resolved, a framed copy of the House Resolution Number 6026 should be appropriately conspicuously displayed in the J. Russell Jennings Correctional Complex, and this resolution should be permanently affixed to the back of the frame display. Resolved by the Board of County Commissioners, Finney County, Kansas, this 20th day of June, 2022. This, before I ask for a vote on the motion, this is the framed copy, and John, would you want to make any comment with regard to this? And then we will have a motion with regard to the resolution, and then we're asking, or the resolution is instructing the copy of our resolution today to be affixed to the back of this. So, John?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and my only purpose being down here this morning is to express thanks to the Finney County Commission for recognizing the incredible life of J. Russell Jennings. This county had the benefit of the service of Russell Jennings in the criminal justice compound, in that he was overseeing the construction of the juvenile detention center. Lakin, Kearney County, Finney County, the state of Kansas, and points beyond the state of Kansas across the nation benefited from the service of Russ Jennings, my best friend. And I appreciate your recognition of his service to our communities this morning. Thank you very much.
Thank you, John, and thank you for your service to our community and to this through the state legislature. So now I would accept a motion for Resolution 30-2022 about displaying this resolution from the legislature.
Mr. Chairman, I would be honored to offer the motion to approve Resolution 30-2022.
Is there a second?
I will second that.
Bob seconds. Any further discussion or comments from the board? If not, all in favor of the motion, please say aye.
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 All opposed, nay. And the motion passes. Thank you, John. Appreciate you being here.
Thank you, Joe.
And we'll give this to our administrator and have him make sure the other gets affixed to the back. The other thing I want to just mention as a side note on the J. Russell Jennings Complex, we had a resolution that we passed here a meeting or two ago, and it was Resolution 2029, And we have 2 copies that we're going to have framed and have them displayed in the complex as well. So I'll give those to our county administrator. Okay, moving on to the next business item is a waiver request, and it has Mackenzie's name on it. Is Mackenzie going to be the one presenting?
Yep, I am.
All right. I see you have backup with you.
Yep, I do. Well, good morning, Chairman and Commissioners. This morning we have before you a waiver request from Section 22.080 of the Finney County zoning regulations. Susan Aldana is requesting a waiver in order to install a new manufactured home on the property located at 2103 West Maple Street. The property is currently zoned RR Rural Residential and is approximately 1.5 acres. There's currently 1 single-family home on the property, 1 single-wide manufactured home on the property, and an accessory structure. The applicant would like to replace the current manufactured home with one for her daughter and grandchildren to live in. She actually owns a double-wide on a separate property, and I have attached pictures in your packet of the manufactured home she'd like to put on the property. There's 1 well and 1 septic system that serves both dwellings on the property. However, the well also serves an additional 2 properties, and those are the 2 properties to the south. The property is currently non-conforming as it contains more than 1 single-family dwelling unit on the property, and the manufactured home does not meet the RDMH standards or residential design manufactured home standards as outlined in Section 23.080 of the Finney County zoning regulations. A nonconforming use is defined in Section 22 of the Finney County zoning regulations as any lot or structure lawfully occupied by a use at the time of the effective date of the zoning regulation or amendments hereto, which does not conform to the regulations of the district in which it is situated. The property has been nonconforming for many years. However, the current manufactured home on the property has been vacant for more than a year. Section 22.080 nonconforming uses permitted to continue of the Finney County zoning regulations states that a nonconforming use can continue to exist as long as there's no structural alterations except those required by law or resolution, and that the nonconforming use is not continued or abandoned for a period of more than 1 year. So not only has this been vacant for more than 1 year, the home that she's wanting to put on the property is a double wide, which would increase the building footprint that's currently there, which would increase the nonconformity of the property. The governing body has granted similar waiver requests in the past. A waiver was granted in 2009 for 3340 North 8th Street. The owner's request was to install a second manufactured home for their mother who was aging and unable to live on her own. The property contained a half an acre, and they were required to install an RDMH home per Finney County zoning regulations. In 2013, a waiver was also granted for 1514 Raceway Road in order to install a second manufactured home on the property. The property was approximately 4.4 acres and was allowed to install a separate septic tank on the property. And then just last year in 2021, a waiver was granted at 3665 West Friend Road. The owner's request was to install a second manufactured home on the property for their mother to live in as she was suffering from health issues. The property contained approximately 23.43 acres, and there were separate utility connections for that manufactured home. So staff's concerns are that if a waiver request is approved for this address, that there may be many requests that will come before the county commission in the future This is a question that we get quite often. There are many non-conforming properties in the county that either have more than one dwelling unit on it, or have previously had a manufactured home that was removed, and they would like to replace it with a new manufactured home. If the governing body chooses to approve this waiver, staff does recommend that the governing body require that the new manufactured home meets the RDMH standards, and those standards are listed within your packet. There are two alternatives before the governing body today. The first is that you may approve the waiver, and the second is that you may not approve the waiver. And staff is unable to make a recommendation of this waiver. And then Susan Aldana, she is here today. If you would like to hear her story and her reasoning for placing this manufactured home on the property.
Thank you, Mackenzie, and just be ready to come back and answer a few questions. Ms. O'Donnell, sorry for mispronouncing your name, but if you would want to step forward, please, and just share any comments that you would like to make about this waiver before we start our discussion.
Pull that microphone kind of toward you. There you go.
Okay, first of all, I'm asking for the waiver because my daughter lost her husband here on February 13th in a tragic incident that happened. Right now, they're going through a difficult time right now through a lot of depression, anxiety. One of my granddaughters already tried committing suicide, was in the hospital, and actually they're all getting counseling. Their support system right now, totally, in regards to anything and everything that they need. I also have my granddaughter that, another granddaughter that has cerebral palsy, and she's bedridden, has a G-tube, and has to be cared for 100% of the time. I mean, she doesn't walk, she doesn't talk. That also plays a part there too, where she'll be able to assist, and I'll be able to assist and help each other out, I guess, on that. But the main one is to try to get my daughter closer so that I'm there for them, and I'm back and forth with them right now, trying to help and take care of the kids while she's going through her emotion state, and also the kids as well. I mean, right now it's a difficult time for everybody.
My quick question to you, and then I'll open it up to my fellow commissioners, is, well, first of all, we extend our sympathy to you for what all is going on with your family, and we empathize with the difficulties that you're having. My question to you is, did you understand before anything was put into motion that we have the zoning and regulations and so forth in Finney County, and did you first start with neighborhood development as far as finding out what those regulations were? Help us understand the steps that you've taken to this.
Yes, I've consulted, try to get some information to see what I could do in order to get that trailer there. If I have to put in additional septic tank or whatever I need to do in order to make this happen, I'm willing to do. So whatever's required, I'm ready for it.
And follow up to that, at this particular point, you have not taken any action as far as starting to move a mobile home out or in or anything of that nature, is that correct?
That's correct. The mobile home that we have right there currently, that's placed on the lot right now, it did go through December 21, where we had that really bad storm, so the roof is already off, and so we need to do something with it, so. But right now, we have everything there. We have not moved anything, haven't touched anything yet, so.
Okay, I just felt those were a couple pieces that were important for our
Yeah.
information here.
Okay.
Thank you for that, so. Larry, we're going to look to you first. What was-
Somebody's being called.
Yeah.
I guess my only question is, you plan on removing the old one?
Correct.
Okay. And I don't have a problem. I'm glad you provided us with a water test. I would encourage you to do that every year.
Yes, we'll do that.
That's the only questions I had.
Okay, Larry. Bob?
Mine are more related to Mackenzie.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, Mackenzie, could we have you come back and talk to us a little bit? Over the last several months, we've run into this mobile home versus manufactured home, and we have made some variances. It appears that we have these two different categories and we keep bumping into them, is there a significant difference in your mind between a mobile home and a manufactured home? Do they both have to have a certain minimum standard other than the pitch of the roof and the kind of type of roof?
And the eve.
And the gutter and this kind of thing. But, you know, after a while, there is a need for housing. And are we being, I'm going to use the word too restrictive, using the variance between mobile home and manufactured home? Or is there a significant difference that impacts the county between those two?
So we define any type of like what you would consider like a mobile home. Our definition of that is a manufactured home. So everything is in the zoning regs considered a manufactured home, but there are certain standards that bring it up to the RDMH standards that make it a little bit different. It brings it up to more of like a single family home type of a feel. It's more of a modular home than the typical manufactured home that you would find in like Garden City or the
East Garden Village?
East Garden Village. Thank you.
All right, and is the county adversely affected by the difference between those two things that you just talked about?
Any residential district, a manufactured home is not allowed to be on that property unless it meets the RDMH standards. The only zonings that allow for a typical manufactured home to be placed on the property would be a manufactured home district or a manufactured home park district or a manufactured home subdivision district. It's also allowed to be placed on a property that's zoned ag that's over 40 acres.
Okay, and then secondly, if we look at that property today with the structure that is there versus what they're proposing, if they do what they're proposing, would the county be better off in terms of function, in terms of visibility, in terms of livability for the taxpayer, to have this allowed versus to continue having the piece of property with no roof and stuff sitting there?
I mean, aesthetically, it would look better to have a different manufactured home on that property.
And we would be
Susan-
harmed by the fact that there may be somebody else will ask for the same thing?
Possibly, yes.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question, but I'll let Dave go first. Yeah.
Well, a couple of questions. The standards you're talking about, that this home that she wants to move in does not meet those standards, is that what you're saying?
It meets some of the standards. Without having an inspector go out and inspect it, we wouldn't be able to make that determination. So we would, if it was approved and she was required to have, meet the RDMH standards, we would have an inspector go out and do a consultation, and see if it does meet those
Would
standards.
that be a big issue here to have an inspector look at that particular building? Is that okay with the landowner? Has that been discussed?
We have not discussed it with Ms. Aldana yet, but I think that she would be more than willing to have that inspected.
As a commissioner, I'm interested in safety, but I'm also, like fellow commissioners, interested in people having affordable housing. And sometimes I think our rules, if you will, our zoning defeats the purpose that it was intended. It gets restrictive. Having lived in a mobile home in my earlier days, I know when it came from the factory, it had a decal on it that it met certain standards. As soon as it pulled into the private lot that I owned, it no longer met those standards according to the rules, because I could have done anything to it. So in order to assure the safety for the person who did anything to it that we would not regard as safe, I would be very comfortable saying, let's let her do that if the inspector will look at it and approve it. Can we agree with that?
And are you saying an inspector inspects it and then for RDMH standards, or just
No,
inspects it for
just
safety?
For safety.
Okay.
Just a walk-through inspection can tell you an awful lot, so.
Well, before we go to a vote on the motion, or on the issue, the wording that I believe you've used several times, Mackenzie, is non-conforming. Just repeat to us, what is non-conforming? Is it the structure itself? Is it the zoning, how it's zoned and what they're wanting to put on there? Just, repeat some of that so that we know exactly what we're going to be voting for.
Okay. I'll go ahead and read the definition of a nonconforming use for you. So that's in section 22 of the Finney County zoning regulations. And it's any lot or structure lawfully occupied by a use at the time of the effective date of the zoning regulation or amendments hereto, which does not conform to the regulations of the district in which it is situated. So since this this property is in the rural residential district, more than one single-family dwelling unit cannot be placed on a property, and a manufactured home that does not meet RDMH standards is not allowed on a property within this district.
So the reason I'm asking you to stress that point, we're actually, if we grant this waiver, we're granting that waiver from two regards. The property and two homes on the property, and also we would be granting the waiver, but we can put in the requirement that it be, what do we say, RDMH standard home. Am I correct on that? Is that what we're doing when we ask, when we approve the waiver that's
Yes.
being requested?
Yes.
Just want to make sure we're all on the same page here. Okay?
Mr. Chairman.
The board's desire.
Well, one more quick comment. I'm not against zoning, and yet I'm against zoning. We've painted the neighborhood development people into a corner. They've got a set of rules that were written starting in 1995, and for those not familiar with Finney County's zoning history, and while that probably made some sense in 1995 to implement zoning, some of it today is no longer, in my opinion, needed, not applicable. So what I see here in this application is somebody wants to improve the property from what it was. And anytime they can improve it, I have to support that. So that's my position. I would offer the motion to approve this waiver if you would
Okay?
accept it.
There is a motion on the table,
I'll second that.
seconded, and now further discussion.
In the motion, do you want to make any stipulations about further testing of water annually, or is that not?
Well, we don't
they-
require that, Larry, from others, so that's,
But we can ask.
yeah, we can. We can also, in my motion, we could put in about a city inspector taking a look at this building.
And we need to have the type of home, right?
Yes.
I think they have to have a permit to put it on, and I think that's where that inspection would come in, to see whether, if we grant the variance, and then they still have to go through the permit process to place the unit, don't they?
Yes, they still
So
have
that
to
would
go
be
through
the
that
inspection
process.
time.
I would like to make one more comment. In the Finney County Environmental Code, this is considered a non-public water supply that serves 2 to 9 service connections. And it does require that require the well to be mechanically chlorinated to all delivered connections, to be tested for bacteria quality at least every 3 months, and maintain logs to verify chlorine residuals and bacteria quality for a period of at least 1 year. I don't know how much that has been regulated, but that is in our environmental code.
And also, in the permitting process, the permit will not be granted if it's not an RDMH home, is that correct?
Unless, the waiver allows for it not to be an RDMH home.
Okay. So should we have in our motion, and follow the permitting process that is in place or something of that nature?
Well,
Yeah,
I mean,
they'll have,
I'm asking a question.
they'll have to do it anyway. What you would need to state in your motion is if you are granting a waiver from the RDMH standards and from the, placing of a manufactured home on a property.
So the waiver that we're granting is because of non-conforming. And if we say no more than that, then the permitting process steps in and she's going to be held to those standards on the home and so forth? I want to make sure, because
Yeah,
we've had too many times where we've come back and had to do the motion over again, and I really don't want to do that.
so it'd be best to specify if you are allowing her to put a manufactured home that does not meet RDMH standards, or if you are requiring it to meet RDMH standards.
Do you want to amend the motion
that
to
would be
require RDMH standards? Yeah.
let's get it so this lady can move the house in.
So to grant the waiver and require RDMH home be located on the property. Trent, before I go to my second over here.
Trent Maxwell, Director of Neighborhood and Development Services. Just to clarify on Dave's thing, to make sure the motion is correct and we're not coming back. If the intent of the motion is to allow her to bring it in, then you definitely want to add the not meeting the requirements of the RDMH. So that way, if we find on inspection that there's even one item that doesn't meet that standard, we're not coming back asking for another waiver for that or forcing her to get a whole nother unit. If your intent is to allow the unit that you've seen in the photos to be installed, then you definitely want the RDMH requirements not to have to be met in your motion, if that's your intent.
I'll ask, stay up there, Trent.
Yeah, I have,
Let's rescind your first motion, please.
okay, I'll withdraw that motion.
And second.
Okay, we're gonna start this over. And so your suggestion is the wording of the motion should be?
For Dave, for how he's articulated his opinion or direction is to approve the waiver without meeting the RDMH standards.
It's not, that's what I intended from the start.
Yeah, but we didn't have it worded that way, and I want to make sure we're correct. And
Yeah.
so is that your motion?
Yeah,
And then,
with a comment.
is that a second, though?
Well, I'll second that motion, yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
Now my comment. Sad thing is that the inspector hadn't already gone and looked at the house, and we have that report today saying this thing looks structurally sound, meets the eyeball test, and then we could say, yay, let's move it in. So
Yeah. Now, to clarify, through the permit process, we will get it inspected. It will have to be safe and sound, electrical, plumbing, mechanical, all those things would be in place.
yeah, and if it's not, then let's send it out to the landfill or whatever, but,
Right. If not, some improvements are gonna have to be made.
okay. All right, now that we have that all settled, we'll,
Are you okay with the motion for the minutes? Okay. I think each of you understands what we just put into the motion for this waiver. Any further discussion? All in favor of the motion, please say aye.
aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion passes. Thank you, and hopefully no redo, so. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Aldana. Okay, let's see, where are we at? Linda, looks like you're on with regard to our resolution for disposition of surplus property.
Thank you. Good morning. Linda Lobmeyer, County Counselor. I'm here to present a resolution adopting a policy with regard to surplus property for the county. As the commission is aware, because we do not have a policy in place, we have to pass a resolution each time we want to dispose of surplus property. Adopting a policy is something that's allowed under the statute, and so I'm requesting that we do that at this time so that we can streamline the county's ability to get rid of to get rid of surplus property more efficiently. So if you have any questions, that's what it's about.
Okay. Simple enough. A discussion or motion from the board members?
I move we accept this policy.
Second.
And the resolution number is 31-2022. It's been moved and seconded. Any further comments or discussion? If not, all in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion passes. Thank you for your work on that, Linda. On the bird mitigation, I don't want to belabor the point here today, but I wanted to keep it in front of us today just to see if there's interest in the board, from the board, in continuing to look at solutions, look at options with regard to this issue that has been voiced by a number of businesses and particularly hoteliers and a couple of key businesses here in town. If the desire is not to go further with this, you won't ever see it again. But if the desire is to continue to consider it, consider funding sources, I'm more than happy to be the point person as far as searching out things to bring back to you. So that's the only reason it's on here today, because we had that as a subject of the joint meeting, and just see whether we continue with any additional research or we stop. So Larry, I'm going to look at you first.
Well, I think that you probably need to pursue it because you've got complaints in the system of people complaining about it, and they're expecting an outcome of some type. I would be in favor of supporting it if we had some partnerships on the thing. I don't want to be the sole funder of this project.
Okay, that's fair enough. Bob?
Yeah, I would agree with that. I don't want to take it on as ours. I think the discussion we had the other day did not yield a lot of support from our partners. So I think without that, I would be hesitant to go forward.
Dave?
I agree with Bob's statements. Our joint meeting proved to be a little less than supportive of going forward as a team. So we can't do it alone.
Okay.
Either financially or just physically. So.
The only comment I've had since that meeting were, I know that there was an email that came to Dave that he shared with us of one person in the county that had some ideas about it. But the only comment I've had following that meeting were, you're hearing from some businesses, you're hearing from some hoteliers. What do the people, individuals within the county think about the issue? So one of my thoughts is, we figure out a way to gather some additional input as well as explore funding options as has been voiced here. So hearing that, we'll continue to do some work on it and bring it back to you if we find some options for funding and what other concerns there might be in the community. With that, we're going to head into the budget presentations that we have today. And yeah, there's the order is on the screen. That's the order in which we will proceed on the budget presentations. And Robert, I'm going to look at you first to see if you have opening comments for any of the budget process and things that you've provided to us. And then we'll hear from the sheriff first.
All right, very well, thank you. As you're aware, county staff has been going through and constructing building the 23 budget, running on, because of staffing issues, running a little bit behind, but we, for the most part, as you see here, have a one of your first and major steps here, which is usually meeting with the more the bigger budgets that we have within our county organizations, from a standpoint of what they're trying to achieve and so forth. What I will say, though, is that as we've talked earlier on wages and so forth, those have not been in the 23 budget yet finalized, so you will see the current wage scale reflected within those budgets today. We should, possibly by the end of this week, have those repopulated with the proposed 23 wage scale that the Board of County Commissioners will need to review and consider here in the very near future. So,
All right. Appreciate that. Sheriff, do you want to come up and give us your thoughts with regard to the budget request that you've submitted?
I'd rather Linda do it because you guys weren't very hard on her at all. She just, she was gone, so I was hoping she'd come up here and do this for me.
Yeah, but she was trying to find income for us through sale of.
Oh, okay. Well,
so-
You're not
I'm not trying, I'm gonna try to spend some of that in.
Oh, okay. All right.
No, just kidding. So anyway, you have our budget up there. I did send over, I think you guys had some stats I sent over as far as what the sheriff's office has been doing, at least the last few years. You'll see that the criminal reports that we've taken have kind of gone up. 2021, we've had 755 reports that we've taken. I won't go down through the list there. You guys can see all of that. Our non-criminal is just, helping citizens or stuff like that. It's stayed about the same. You'll notice 443. Traffic is about the same. DUIs, accidents are up a little bit from the year before. Our arrest numbers are coming back up. Last year there were 218. You can see all those. Our office has been very busy. You see the registered offenders has gone way up that we've dealt with, 71. Warrants has gone up, and the number that we've served. Same with the civil process. It kind of goes up and down, but it's coming on the rise again. And one of the things I would like to hit on is the jail bookings. It has gone down due to COVID, but we're on the rise again. You can see that 918 so far this year. If you look at the meals that we served last year, over 91,000 meals that we served up there in the jail. Those numbers are unbelievable to me. I think our average daily population is on the rise. I think we're setting right now today at, what are we at, Jeff? I think we're over 100. I know we were right around 100 last week. I'm sure we're there, maybe a little higher than, not much higher than 100. So that's on the rise. The total mileage that we did for the sheriff's office in 2021 is over 517,000 miles, and you know we're the area-wise second largest county. You guys know that in the state of Kansas, so there's a lot of area to cover.
Does that count transportation of prisoners for court appearances too, Mike?
We have transport here. As far as court appearances, most of them are walk, but just transports on inmates here, we did over 26,000 miles.
Mike, I ask a quick question. Can you define, you're determining here arrest at 218. What is an arrest? You talking about like a felony, or you talking about when somebody is booked into jail? What constitutes?
But that's what we're considering booked into jail, and that's just our arrest for our cases, just our cases
DUI
alone.
that you put in jail is one of those arrests.
Yeah, and that doesn't count. If we make an arrest for the Garden City Police Department on one of their cases or one of their warrants, that doesn't count for us by state standards. That goes towards theirs. So there could be other arrests that we actually have out there that's not on here. Overall, our mileage is kind of broke down. Patrol was over 384,000, civils over 22,000. Investigations had over 40,000. This one here, calls dispatch. These are calls for service that our officers on the street take. It's over 16,000 calls for the whole year of last year. That's about 45 calls a day. we got that from the police department, we kind of matched our numbers, and I'd say that's pretty close, that's pretty accurate. And that doesn't mean that every call they go to, they're generating some kind of paperwork, that's just responding to assist somebody, and it could be a criminal. The patrol hours work, that one there kind of was eye-opening to me. If you see, and we have years past there that we don't have on here, but it was definitely on the rise, and what those are is patrol hours. So our officers on patrol there, they do what we call an action log, and so we can generate through the computer how many hours per year. And if you see, that was on the rise until last year. That's when we become shorthanded, and so we don't have as many officers on the street. That kind of showed because we take officers from the jail and put them on the street. The jail's been shorthanded. I think as of last week, and I was talking to Jeff, he ran out of fingers. I think we're like 12 or 13 short in the jail. And so that has a domino effect. And so what the problem is it's probably a little skewed, because I was thinking about this, and that 42,000 hours last year probably doesn't reflect, because we only have the hourly people, the patrol guys that do an action log. We have several administrators that I know went out and assisted because they were shorthanded, and those hours won't show up on here. And then it goes back to the jail. I couldn't get, because I was told, I asked for it, and it was a little hard to get overtime hours for the jail. And I know there's a lot up there. And that worries me, because they're putting in a lot of hours. They're already working 12-hour shifts, and they have a sign-up sheet up there, or they call them in. And there's a lot of people not getting a lot of days off. And I'm afraid of burnout, and I know that I'm very supportive of what Robert's doing on the wages that you'll see later, and I like that. We need that to help those people that are putting in all that hours, take care of them, plus we can get some more hired to alleviate some of that overtime. I know some people say, well, you're not spending as much money if you're doing overtime, but those people I know I applaud them. They're doing great, because I looked at it and I thought a lot about it, and it's like, I grew up in farming like some of you, or ranching, and there's times at the farm, you harvest, you put in a lot of hours, but that harvest, once it ends, you can kind of relax. It seems like these guys' harvest has never ended. It just keeps going and going and going, and that worries me. Yeah, so it does affect, like I said, it has a trickle effect to the rest of the agency. So with all these numbers, like I said, you guys are well aware things are going up, vehicle prices are going up, gas prices are going up, and that's what we reflected in our budget. I think the last time we bought Dodge Durangos, they were about $33,000. To buy that same vehicle this year was about $43,000. So I'd say it's about $10,000 that everything's increased. You can see the price at the pumps, everybody's it's hit all of us in here is just as much. I know I seen an article, the Barton County Sheriff was really concerned about his budget just due to fuel prices, and he was already pretty slim. I think you guys have all seen that too, or some of you may have, and jails closing. We had Sedgwick County who contacted us recently asking us to take some of their inmates because they don't have enough. They got the sheriff working in the jail. I've asked up there, they won't let me go up and work. I don't know why. Probably because I'm never around. It seems like I'm to meetings or other things, so they say you're not consistent enough. But anyway, they've asked us, and we're kind of in the same boat. I mean, they have 1,500 inmates, and they're closing down 3 pods, and they're short, I think they said like 60, 70 jail deputies. Well, we only have 100 inmates, but we're short 13. We're kind of in the same boat. We couldn't help them out. And I told them, I said, not that we're saying no, just not right now. So, and I know that kind of helps us a little bit of revenue there, but we just don't have the manpower to do that. So there's where we are at, and we did put together a little narrative there that kind of shows where our money goes to, and this is probably a little off right now because we didn't again have in there the 2023 as far as the wages, so the percentages of our budget. But you can see that right now with the budget, the way it currently is, 70% of it, a little over, goes towards salaries, which we all knew that, so. But that's what we do at the sheriff's office. We're very busy. We don't have a lot of manpower. Like I said, I applaud the people over there. Obviously, they love the sheriff's office. They love what they're doing over there because they step up, they come in. We're moving people around all the time, taking them away from their own job. They volunteered, or we've asked them and they said, yeah, we'll do it. I've got office ladies over there right now moving around doing each other's jobs, which takes away from their own job. And so I've got one that's gonna be doing different billing, so Dory, you're gonna have to be patient.
Train us again.
Yes.
Larry, I'm starting with you each time because I seem to forget you if I don't, so.
Yeah, you are. Question, have you seen an increase on your interaction with, say, ICE or illegals? Is that an ongoing concern with your department on what it's gonna cost us down the road?
We do, they come in, we actually, I think, have a contract with them right now. We're just a temporary housing facility for them. They'll bring an inmate in, we can't have them for, what is it, longer than 72 hours. And then we gotta move them on. We take them either to, I think it's El Dorado or Kay County, Oklahoma. Yes, I believe is where and so we usually run down there twice a week, which ICE pays for that to house them and then transport them. With the current administration at the federal level, the presidency, of course, they slowed down. They were pretty active until the change there, but it's picking back up. So I think every time they have a change, it kind of affects them a little bit. So, but yeah, we're seeing it's starting to pick back up.
Bob?
You know, as I look across all of the various departments, it looks like the personal services, the labor, if you will. How many people are employed by the sheriff's department?
I believe we have, it's 101 or 102. I think we had 102 on here is what it shows.
Okay, and as we look at all of this between 2022 budget and 2023, if we were to total them all up, knowing that there's still not an adjustment for the 23 labor rate, if you will, it looks like that's actually less than it was a year ago. Is that basically planning of not having as many people on payroll next year?
I guess I don't follow the questioning there.
Well, in other words, when I look at, in administration, it went from 284,000 to 282. So obviously, you're not planning any expansion but there's other areas where there's at least a drop of a person. If we did that, what happens to the patrol? Does the patrol have as many people next year planned as you had this year?
We plan to, we have 20 patrol deputies. I'm not sure where we're at. If we're, I'd like to say we're full. We have them selected. They just aren't able to leave the jail right now. We had a young man that we were going to bring down that just we can't because we just can't afford to leave the jail that short. So it's been, in my opinion, in my experience, it's been easier for us to take some administrators and put them on patrol than it is to take people and try to put them in the jail. That jail takes a lot of training to do that. And like I said, they won't even let me go up there
And yet the jail is down $50,000. So to me, that would say that you're eliminating a position.
I think some of that was due to probably, we had a nurse that had on.
There's several things going on there, and I believe, Mike, if I remember right, I think you have about 16 on the road right now. It's about 3 or so,
Yeah.
perhaps coming from your jail employee population,
Yes.
if I remember correctly. Overall, you'll see in Mike's budget this year, just an increase of approximately $400,000, absent any 23 wage adjustment. predominantly that increase really stems to the new agreement with ACH in providing the nursing services and healthcare services over there. Additionally, there were no reduction in force in any of the divisions within the sheriff's office. So they still have those full-time equivalents on the books to be filled as soon as they find proper, employees to help fill those, whether they get them out on the road or whether they get them in the jail, whatever the case may be, to help assist in that regards. As you recall, last year, we made there's been a little bit of a shift over the last 2 years. One was in the accounting program, and two was that we pulled benefits and so forth out of the sheriff's budget and put it back in employee benefits. So that's where you see that big swing that we saw last year. But from really now on, it will be relatively consistent. And once again, absent the increase for the ACH health for the jail inmates. The other thing you'll see this year is that working with Mike and Jeff on the budget, we created a little bit better equipment replacement program so that they could replace, on average, those 5 vehicles that they normally have planned on an annual basis. So we've made some adjustments there, reflecting some of the increases and so forth that you see in the current market.
Okay, thank you.
Dave?
I don't have many questions at all, but it's a little tough to track our budgeting, particularly in law enforcement, because it's not your fault, but things keep moving back and forth. And for example, looking at your budget here, the recently approved health care is not part of this.
It should be in that.
Yeah, it is.
It is?
It's in there.
Okay.
It is in the sheriff's jail
I thought
under
that was
construction.
being funded out of ARPA this year.
For this year, yes, but not for
Next year,
23. Yeah,
okay.
23 is included.
But frankly, it gets a little confusing, and I guess there's no avenue to get it so that we quit moving things back and forth, but we,
Well, here's the deal, Commissioners, is that in the past, expenditures were placed wherever they had budget authorities. No rhyme or reason to it. They could pay for jail nurse out of vehicles because they had the money in it. And just didn't make so this is a process that we're going through over years to try and clean up so that you'll have something that
well, my comment, Robert's not intended to blame. It's simply stating that due to the state's restrictions on budgeting, we've moved things around to be a little bit of an advantage to us and to our taxpayers. And then we move it back, and so trying to compare this year to last year or the year before becomes a little bit difficult. That's what I'm saying. So, all right.
And some of that administration salary you may see, I think, compared to this year, there still might have been in there for Sheriff Basque. Now, if you want to pay me what he's making, I'm certainly not opposed, but that's probably some of the difference was with that. And plus, we do have a lot of new employees, so they're probably not making as much. We've had a lot of retire, some move on, so.
It looks to me like, Mr. Chairman, that our system has sorted through these budgets pretty carefully, and I don't see a whole lot of just ridiculous things. I see what's probably needed to function as an agency, so.
That's what we're trying to, our approach is. So.
I appreciate that.
And yes, that's why we're trying to show you the numbers and I know the people over there are, like I said, extremely busy and kudos to them for what they're doing for us.
And my question, Mike, is not related to specific numbers, but kind of tied to what Larry started in the conversation. But when you talk about the patrol hours being down and primarily because you don't have enough people to do the patrolling, what has that done to, with regard to law enforcement and the drug traffic and other issues related to drug trafficking in our county? Because we know of a couple close friends who lost children to fentanyl and so forth. But are we able to police, if you will, for that? Or are we handicapped because we don't have enough patrol hours with regard to those kinds of issues?
You know, I think obviously the obvious answer is we had more patrol hours, we're gonna get more of that. But I think like I said, we've moved people around and we've put another drug investigator just by kind of moving some slots around so that we could pick up. And we have two very good, very active over there at the sheriff's office right now. Investigations doing a heck of a job. I think that it always sparks when somebody's doing that, and I think it's sparked some of the patrol. They're doing a little more when they can. So I think we're doing pretty good. Could we do better? Of course we could if we had more people out there. But I think it's gotten better. I really believe it has.
And I realize that my question, there's many prongs to that. Burglaries and so forth can be traced back to those things. But I'm most concerned about the fentanyl and the deaths that it causes. And thank you for your answer. So what is the board's desire regarding the sheriff's budget?
Mr. Chairman, I move we take this budget under advisement.
There is a motion, and it's seconded by Dave. Any further comments? All in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay.
Thanks, Mike.
Mike and Jeff, thank you for your work on this budget. Appreciate it. Kurt? Road and Bridge, Public Works.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Kurt Logsden, Finney County Public Works Director. I'll give you just a little bit of a summary before I get into the 23 budget. Last year was a year of routine maintenance by the Public Works Department because they operated without a Public Works Director and a county engineer. The programs, policies, and procedures remained unchanged, and the 21 adopted budget was followed as budgeted for by the former Public Works Director and the county engineer. In 21, 6 Mile Road received 9 miles of a 1-inch mill and a 2-inch HMA overlay for approximately $1,215,000. Preventive maintenance was performed for 40 miles of asphalt road with a 3/8 chip and seal for approximately $625,000. Preventive maintenance was formed by crack sealing 25 miles of asphalt road for $124,000. In 21, the crews raised 9 miles of county dirt road and resurfaced that 9 miles with aggregate. And in 21, Public Works replaced 1 water truck, 1 semi-tractor, an asphalt patch truck, 1 belly dump trailer, and 3 pickup trucks. Some of that equipment that was ordered last year is still not slated to be received until 2024. This year, I was hired as the Public Works Director. During the first few months I've been here, I've been examining the way things have and are currently being done. Most of the following will be done this year, but some may not be implemented until 2023. The first thing I intend to do is to reorganize the Public Works Department into a more specialized and efficient department that will be equipped with the personnel and knowledge needed to handle the change and growth that Finney County is being faced with right now. An equipment utilization analysis will be done with our fleet to determine what equipment is needed and which equipment is not needed. A new fleet department will be updated and receive fleet management guidelines that will produce a much more efficient fleet program. A prioritized road and bridge capital plan will be put in place to better prioritize where funds are spent. A new road maintenance plan will be developed, which will improve our gravel road maintenance. Drastically improved right-of-way management procedures will be created. And we are currently developing Sewer District 4, and we'll be doing a major sewer improvement project, which will standardize all the sewer districts together. I brought these things up at this time because the changes the Public Works Department will be seeing has a direct impact on the budget for next year. These proposed changes made the development next year's budget rather hard, as these new policies are not yet in place, and at which they will all have an impact on the '23 budget. This year's budget was initially prepared by Public Works employees who had never prepared budgets before, and so they was helped and directed by Robert. Now with the economy, the rest of this year and next year is complicated and is going to be monitored very closely. The price of gas and diesel has more than doubled. The price on parts fluctuates anywhere from 43 to 53%. The price on truck tires has gone up 12%, but the price on grader tires has gone up 48%. The price on asphalt has gone up anywhere from 75 to 100%. With the current price of oil this year, I decided that only the preventative road maintenance items would be bid out as long as the final bid amount falls inside our budgeted amount for this year. Old North Highway 83 and West Fork Road was budgeted for a 2-inch mill and 2 HMA overlay this year. I have canceled that project because the price of asphalt is currently higher than concrete and has doubled. The project was estimated at $1,450,000, but if let out this year, that project would be anywhere from $2.8 to $3 million because of the price difference of asphalt. Those roads will be scheduled in 2023, provided the economy allows. Preventive maintenance will be performed by crack sealing 25 miles of asphalt road this year for $157,000. We are currently out to bid for 40 miles of chip seal, which was estimated at approximately $775,000. I expect those bids to come back higher than anticipated because of the increase of oil. If the bids on emulsion comes back extremely high, this project might also have to be dropped this year. 5 miles of Crist Road have been raised and resurfaced so far this year. 2 specialized sign trucks will be ordered this year to replace both of the existing sign pickups that we have now. Mower decks will go ahead and go out to bid this year for replacement, but all of the other equipment is going to cease until I complete the equipment utilization analysis. The '23 budget before you is set to maintain the existing programs set into place by the previous director. And the budget before you is $78,000 less than this year's budgeted amount. I didn't have enough time since I've been here to effectively study and prioritize the transportation system, equipment, and fleet, and existing policies and procedures before the '23 budget was developed. The sewer districts have been studied and is expected to be fully updated with the addition of Sewer District 4. There's a good chance that that will all get started this year, but more than likely, it's probably going to get carried over into next year. In 2023, the transportation system and equipment will have received studies which will allow for a new thought-out and planned 2024 budget development. Next year, North Highway 83, I intend to go ahead and give it a 2-inch mill and a 2-inch HMA overlay, provided we get back to some normalcy in oil prices. Preventive maintenance of 36 miles of asphalt road is scheduled for next year with a 3/8-inch chip seal application. The budget amount is estimated at $764,216 should this budget be approved before you. Preventive maintenance will be performed by crack sealing 46 miles of road for $140,000. 48 miles of pavement will receive center line striping for next year. Five miles of high prioritized gravel roads will be reshaped and have dust suppressant applied next year. 25% increase for in-house repair costs and preventive maintenance is in the budget. A 25% increase in vehicle and equipment outsourcing due to the aging equipment fleet that we have and with the employee shortage we're experiencing. The budget reflects a 33% increase in diesel fuel costs. The budget reflects a 25% increase in gas costs. The training line item in my budget shows a 75% increase in training. I have 30 employees that I plan on getting into the Kansas Road Scholar Certification Program. The proposed budget reflects uniforms for all crews. The proposed budget purchases 4 new traffic counters. Some graders will probably need to be replaced, but again, it's undecided until I do the equipment utilization analysis. Now, Ravenna Bridge recently received the Kansas Local Bridge Improvement Grant to be utilized in '23 and in '24. The design was already approved to be expended for this year, so the design is still being done this year. However, the cost to the county for that bridge is an additional $500,000 out of our budget. And I can't recommend spending that additional $500,000 right now on the Ravenna Bridge because the Ravenna Bridge is not in that bad a shape. And the Ravenna Bridge is on a very low-travel road, gravel road that receives very little traffic. This was something that the former county engineer had reflected, and then because of the employees last year not having a director, they had went ahead and gone forward with this project. The good thing is that the design will be done this year, and those funds will be expended, and then at a later date, should I go forward, there's another grant that, for the off-system bridges that I might go ahead and put this in for because that's an 80-20. The Kansas Local Bridge Improvement Grant only gives the county $150,000. That grant is more for, let's say, it's more intended for the older timber bridges that a lot of the Kansas counties have, and the state just doesn't give us much money for that. Now, the other bridge grant is basically an 80-20 split, so I intend on trying to get the Ravenna Bridge into that one, and if selected, then the additional money by the county would be very, very minimal. That's basically it with the information I have for you. Robert, and I know the entire county right now, is working on this wage study and trying to get the wages up. And the comment that I have is that your employees are the #1 asset the county has. Without the employees, the equipment's gonna sit, it's not gonna get used. Without the employees, the buildings will get in bad shape, the roads, everything. I really hope that you guys can really think hard about the study that they're working so hard on, because it is drastically needed. Right now, my department is 33% shy of all of our employees. And that's putting an impact on the roads. And we really need to get more personnel in here. And that's it, if you guys have questions.
No, they probably will, but let me follow up real quick since you're on that personnel subject, Curtis, and I appreciate your summary of last year and this year. And appreciate the fact that you've only been here a little while, you know, and you've inherited many things from previous public works directors and engineers. But we heard the sheriff say that one of his concerns is burnout, and they have people working 12-hour shifts and overtime and so forth. What is it in public works? Are you working over, are you paying overtime, or you just working the 40 hours and that, whatever that gets us, that's it as far as road repair? Or how are you handling that with the 33% shortage, the work that needs to be done and so forth, personnel-wise?
We have been working quite a bit of overtime. Overtime wasn't necessarily in the budget, but because of the lack of personnel, of course, the funds are there. I don't have those figures in front of me or anything, but we have been working a lot of overtime, and I really anticipate more, quite a bit more being done as soon as the grass and the weeds come up on our roadsides. The mowers are gonna have to be out there nonstop. So that's gonna be an impact. So,
Okay, thank you for
yep,
that.
a lot more overtime.
Yeah. Larry?
In the past, we used leases, lease purchase agreements and things like that on acquiring big machinery. Is that still an option, or what do you?
Yes, that's still an option. After I decide through the equipment utilization analysis what equipment we need, what we can get rid of, that's something that I'll probably be looking at. And then that's also probably a discussion I'll be having with Robert through the equipment rotation plan that we have. I have an idea, though, that from what I see, I mean, we still have graders in our fleet right now. I mean, I believe we have one grader that's a 1985 grader. And we might be able to purchase a few or something, but I think that the lease purchase is going to be a powerful option.
Also, yeah, that was my next question. You know, I know at one time we had a lot of old equipment that needed to be moved on down the road.
Yep.
And they'd started the process, but I didn't know how far along they were with everything.
Well, we have a couple new graders. The stuff that was ordered last year is going to make an impact, but again, it's taken so long to get the equipment in. The asphalt patch truck, I mean, for not to be here till 2024, that's just, it was wow, you know, and that was ordered last year. So that's kind of a specialized piece. The graders isn't that big of an issue. You know, you can get them in, I think it's 6 to 8 months, so.
Well, I think, you know, also hopefully, you know, our thinking years ago was that the more modern equipment, that would become more efficient operator use of them too. And maybe we could do a little more with what newer equipment.
Mm-hmm. There's a big difference between the graders now and those ones that's back in 1985. The comfort level is just so much better that, you know, you're going to get a lot better result out of the operators.
Bob?
No, I guess I'm excited about this equipment utilization. I think if there is one comment that we often get from taxpayers is that it looks like our yard down there has better equipment than any contractor's ever seen. And it always brings to mind that maybe we have too much. So I'm really excited about the fact. And I guess I also like the fact that you have a relatively large item for repair parts, because there are a lot of pieces and you have some talented maintenance people that can keep that equipment on the road if you have enough people to run it.
Correct.
So I like the whole overview of where you're headed, so I'm excited to see how that comes together.
Okay?
Thanks.
Dave?
Your concern about employment is widespread. I had a conversation a couple nights ago with a district engineer for KDOT, and he was pointing out their problems just like yours. He has a $9 million budget to hire and employ folks. Can't get get enough folks hired, but he has a $12 million budget for consultants and for hiring contractors. And, you know, and you look at that, that's not a very good investment, it doesn't look like. And I think what you're saying to us, unless things improve, that's kind of where you're headed, where you're gonna have to do some contracting and consulting and so on. And we need to head that off if we can, so we'll see where we can go to.
Well, any work you guys can do on it, I mean, I know I would appreciate it, and I know every department head would, so
Right, okay.
drastically needed.
Thank you.
I don't have any additional questions. What's the board's desire regarding the road and bridge budget?
I move we take this budget under advisement.
There's a motion. Is there a second?
All second.
Go ahead. We're going to give that one to Dave, and Larry will get the next one.
Thank
Any
you.
further comments?
Thank you.
Any further comments? If not, all in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion passes. Thank you, Curtis. Appreciate it. We're going to continue on with the budget requests out of respect for the time for some of the presenters and so forth, too. So, Shruti, the Health Department.
Good morning.
Thanks, Rudy. Pull that mic, we need to get her a little box to stand on. So.
Yes, I did try to wear heels, so hopefully I can reach this. But good morning, and thank you for this opportunity to present the budget for our department. I'll start with, like Kurt, I'll start with the challenges that we've had through the last 2 years. For the health department, the main thing that has affected us has also affected the rest of the county in terms of the COVID-19 pandemic. And most of last year was devoted towards dealing with the pandemic, both in terms of offering testing and vaccination services, and then also trying to help other organizations and entities in the county by with the outreach services, as well as making sure that everybody is updated with the correct guidelines that are passed down from the state and CDC. So that was what we were mainly involved with most of last year. And I have some numbers. We, based on our testing sort of went down as compared to 2020 as testing became more widely available with other entities and not just the health department. So we tested approximately 5,000 people in 2021, and we had around 3,284 positives in the county, and these were these were traced for contact tracing and surveillance. So my point here is that most of our staff was devoted towards offering services for not just for testing, contact tracing, and vaccination, and not just the COVID team that we have hired. And as a result, some of the other services, the routine services that we offer under our at our community clinic, as well as the general clinic, and also under our grants, including the family planning and the maternal and child health grants, they saw a significant, let's say not significant, somewhat of a decrease in the services that we offered. So for example, family planning in 2019, we had 2,821 utilizers, and in 2021, it reduced to 2,084. And so far in 2022, we've had 746 service utilizers. And so one of the reasons for this decrease is, of course, that our resources were diverted towards pandemic response. The other one is that we've faced a lot of staff turnaround and staff attrition. These issues were discussed in the previous two budget requests. There has been a lot of burnout in the staff. Morale has been low in general, especially dealing with the pandemic. And we've lost a lot of staff. So at present, we have, out of 5, we have only 2 nurses, and other than our charge nurse, Dana. And so our clinical staff is about half capacity right now. And so that has translated to not seeing as many patients under our family planning program. The program that has suffered the most is the maternal and child health program, whereas we saw 323 patients in 2019, we only saw 30 in 2021, and so far in 2022, we have seen 4. But that is because we do not have an MCH nurse since last year, and we've been actively trying to recruit an MCH nurse who can see these patients. So some of the other achievements that, let me now go back to the achievements. One of the major achievements was the active collaboration that we had with a lot of local organizations, including the health providers and health organizations and community organizations, and the collaborations were useful to offer testing as well as vaccination services, and also keep guidelines updated, guide the community, answer questions that people had about COVID as they arose. And this also resulted in a number of outreach events that we had organized through our department, or we also supported events that were organized by, say, Genesis, et cetera, and we offered support in terms of manpower for vaccination, volunteering time for offering vaccination or doing testing, et cetera. So that is something that we have expanded on, and other than that, we have also tried to expand on outreach services. Last year, the first annual health and safety fair was organized last year in July, and we will be continuing to do that so we are going to have that again this year in July. Based off this, we are trying to expand our outreach in terms of health education and promotion efforts, and we have quite a few of those events planned for this year. For 2023, our goals are mainly to keep up the services for the pandemic as is necessary. So currently, we have entered an endemicity mode, where from KDHE we've seen quite a bit of retraction in the sort of services that we were required to offer initially, and hopefully these will be all that is needed. So we have seen a reduction in what we need to do in terms of disease surveillance and contact tracing. And we've seen a reduction in the demand for testing and vaccination as well. So in the 2023 budget reflects these changes, in that the COVID grants, they get over in June 2023, and post that we will be reducing our COVID team to just 1 person, and hopefully that will be sufficient to keep watch over how the pandemic is going to, whatever is going on with the pandemic. The next thing that we have planned, the next thing in terms of planning for the pandemic is post June 2023, we would like to have a full-time person who is right now a part of the COVID team, but will come on to to the county employee list, and we'll be able to keep track of outbreaks as they happen, because we've had new diseases that have come up. There has recently been a scare about monkeypox. So we need to have a person, and not just a reportable disease nurse, but another person who will be keeping track of all these things and will be working closely with the state and with CDC to make sure that all the guidelines are in place and we are doing whatever is needed to keep track of diseases as they emerge. So that is the managing COVID endemicity goal that we have for next year. Then the second goal that we have is to build up to 2019 levels of functioning. Like I said before, we have not been seeing as many clients in, especially for the family planning and the maternal and child health service programs, which are our major service. Which are the major services that were utilized at our clinic. So for that, we need to recruit qualified staff. We need to also make sure that our staff are cross-trained so that when we lose staff, other staff are able to take over. And then our outreach efforts are going to also help to bring our clientele back now that we are going to be opening up more fully, and now that we are going to be able to have walk-ins like we used to have before the pandemic. So that's our second goal, and from that comes the expanding the outreach services that we've talked about. For this, currently our community health educator position is vacant. We would like to restart this position and hire somebody in that position so that we can have more of a dialogue with the community on social media, as well as more real-life events, so to speak. We will also try to strengthen our relationships that we've built up over the past and which we have really enhanced during the pandemic with community-based organizations and with local health providers in order to make sure that we can reach our population better. And we will be participating in more community events. Some of this will be under the programs that we already have, the maternal and child health and immunization grants that we receive from the state will help us organize more community events where we will be offering, we will be trying to educate people and promote health, and also offering vaccination and school checkups, etc. The next goal for 2023 is reorientation and enhancement of administrative practices, which includes the health personnel issue that we talked about. We've had a lot of attrition and again, like I said, low morale, burnout, and we have started efforts on this already. We worked with Robert to offer more competitive wages to attract more qualified personnel, and we will be making more efforts to hire, especially nurses, which are hard to come by right now. And we will also be instituting measures to make sure that the staff who are already here do not want to leave. And for this, we have started, we've started weekly meetings and more events where all the staff come together and we have a chance to discuss what is going on. Because I think one of the things that happened during the pandemic was it became very, very fragmented. People were just so occupied with providing services and just rushing from one place to the other to make sure that services are being provided, that they had no chance to even exchange what their problems are and stuff. So we will be continuing to do this, and again, cross-training employees, making sure that that people know what is going on with other programs, so that if we lose one nurse, we are able to put another nurse to manage that program, sort of a thing. And then we will also be we will also be sending more staff for in-person conferences and training. Now, this is something that is mandated under our family planning and MCH grants in particular, and also the other grants that we have received from the state. But over the past year, that was greatly reduced because most of the in-person conferences were converted to Zoom or canceled altogether. So as they restart over the next year, that is something that will take up a lot of, that will account for some of the expenses that we have budgeted and will also take up staff time. So that's, and hopefully attending more trainings, conferences will help staff stay motivated and on track for performing their duties. I think that's about it from me. The one thing to note is that we have budgeted for some equipment and office equipment replacements, etc. And we do have the COVID grants that we will be utilizing for making those replacements that are sort of necessary over the next few years, including the a refrigerator and some office furniture, a multifunctional printer. So we will be trying to utilize our COVID grants towards those expenditures.
Yeah, that's good utilization of those particular funds, yeah. So, Larry, we'll start with you again.
Yes, thank you for the report. Question on, I noticed, Clients Serve program, your refugees are up almost 50% just year-to-date, January, May, which is exceedingly high, appears to me like. Is that just? How do you, what qualifies to fall into the refugee program?
I mean, I think that these are the people who are brought for like a health checkup by certain organizations, and we are, that is also something that we are remunerated for. So seeing people under the refugee program brings in revenue as well. But I do think that the world events as they have taken place over the past few months are responsible for more refugees that we've been seeing. For example, we saw an upsurge in refugees from Afghanistan earlier this year, and now we've been seeing more people from Ukraine and stuff. So I think that it's a reflection of what's going on the world stage, but it's also that we try to see these patients because it's a revenue source as well.
It's hard to tell on the numbers on the general clinic, but, with the advent of Tyson opening their own health clinic, what do you anticipate your drop in number of people you will have to visit with? Or
I'm not exactly sure what to anticipate because right now we have only one APRN, the nurse practitioner, who's been seeing patients, and one. And Dana and one nurse. So a lot of our drop in patients is also because we just don't have the manpower to see patients. So for example, whereas our appointment time used to be 20 minutes, now we've expanded it to 45 minutes for a lot of patients because we just don't have the nurses available to, prepare patients and stuff. So I'm not really sure if the drop is because there's more competition and people are choosing to go elsewhere, or it is because of we don't have the slots available. So that is something that I think we'll be able to figure out a little more over the next few months, especially if we are able to recruit nurses. That would be helpful.
also, do you do pre-employment screening for employees or employers?
Yes, I think so. I mean, I do remember talking about this with my staff, but I don't have the details. I'm sorry.
That's fine. Thank you.
Bob?
Yeah, I guess I'm sitting here looking at the numbers that you've presented, and our cases are going down year to year because of the COVID, and excellent response that you had during that time. And yet in the last 2 years, we're basically projecting doubling the salary type situation. I'm a little baffled by that. Do you have any kind of joint interaction with the other health providers in the community? The hospitals, the doctors, Genesis, whomever else? Do you ever get together and say, let's serve this clientele and make sure they all get covered, but let's not do the same thing for everyone?
So far, I mean, I have I have attended meetings where all the clients all other health providers are present, and there are meetings that are organized by Live Well on a fairly regular basis, but mostly we have talked about. We have not talked about duplication of effort. I think that's what you are getting at. But mostly we've talked about how to make sure that we are continuing to provide services, and the ones that are not available are elsewhere. For example, family planning is something that we have that are not available at the hospital and stuff. So how do we make sure that those stay at our priority list? So far, we have not really discussed about duplication, which I think I will try to bring up next time, or I'll try to organize something about it. But yes, we do meet with the other healthcare providers pretty regularly.
Okay, and then the other question on the WIC program, the Women, Infant, and Children, is that standalone responsibility of the county? Is it not supported back from the state or federal government?
It's,
'Cause
it's entirely grant funded. It's a reimbursed, all expenditures are reimbursed by the state, as far as I understand.
So then it's not a real expense?
Correct. It has, it's all grant, once again, grant provided, pass through from feds to the state. Roughly over, I think it's over $400,000 if I remember what that.
Yeah, 572, yeah.
And then the other, you have another 6 or 7 programs that you're required by the state to provide, whether it's maternal and infant care or family planning and those types of things. Those are all required that you were planned, that you get a certain dollar amount, and then you're required to match it on an annual basis. And so that's predominantly the services that the Public Health Department provides. The clinic is the one that I think what you may be referring to, which in over the last year has been downsized, if you will, and in addition to downsizing it, took away the aspect of the growing the health department. A couple of years ago, coming in and emphasize that we did not want to compete with local healthcare providers, but in essence be that kind of that parachute, that safety gap to provide the necessary services for those that may want or choose to go to the health department. So there's within our clinic then obviously we see do a lot of school physicals and vaccinations and things like that, which is very common across the state of Kansas in public health to provide those. So really the clinic is the one that I think now Shruti and her team are really trying to right size and figure out what niche can we field within the community. And once again, we go back to that, the health care rankings that the state puts out on an annual basis. And I think you all, majority of you saw that last year, and we're kind of in that middle of the 105, and so we're trying to figure out, what is it that we can do to become relevant in the community to help increase those rankings.
Okay, thank you.
Dave?
Bob's concern about duplication we've shared before, but because of the secrecy, if you will, of medical records, it makes it somewhat difficult to actually see if we're duplicating. So, but but I applaud the effort to try to sort that out and to have a niche as you identified. I have an off-the-budget question, but it kind of, at an appropriate time. We told some voters who voted for a sales tax that someday we're going to build a new EMS and a health department building. And we're got a piece of property. Do we have a plan? I guess I'm asking this again, or at some point, I still visualize we need to hire an architect or somebody to start the design work and find out what's needed before we start building. Where, if anywhere, any place are we?
Okay, well, with all the other things we have going on, that is on our grand plan list, but keep in mind and recall that you will not be receiving revenues to fund that project until about September of this year. So we still have time to get things in place to begin the process of soliciting for architects and moving that project forward.
Well, my reason, Robert, for asking the question now is we're considering her budget for next year, and is this architect, if you will, this whatever, is that something to start next year or the year after? We at some point we need to kind of identify where we're headed with that project.
Those sales tax revenues for that particular referendum question will be placed into your general fund, allowing you the most flexibility to utilize those funds and to include this project that you're speaking of.
Okay, all right, thank you. And I need to ask Rudy a personal question. The little one's still walking, talking, or not yet?
Ready for college, but not yet walking and talking.
All right, thank you.
What is the board's desire regarding the health department budget?
Mr. Chairman, I move we take this budget under advisement.
It's been moved. Is there a second? Seconded by Bob. Any further comment? All in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Shruti, thank you very much. Appreciate the report and appreciate your leadership. And he's moving toward the front. We'll hear from Skylar with regard to emergency medical services, EMS.
Good morning. All right, you can see there, so probably the biggest problem that we're kind of looking at here is, staffing is an issue for us. Currently, I have two open positions right now. We're going to probably have to revisit a little bit on the pay cycle on what you've been submitted there, kind of similar to what the sheriffs did, trying to make our wages more competitive with the people that we compete with. Right now, I have two open positions right now that we're trying to fill. Very difficult to find paramedics to come down here. We do have a few right now that I currently have 3 employees that are in the paramedic program right now. They should be paramedics by the end of the year if everything goes well. But those are accounted for. There's still the 2 open positions regardless of what they do. And so that's our biggest challenge. What we're trying to do here is trying to make the pay for our staff comparable to surrounding areas. Now we do have, it does get a little complicated with how we have our overtime. We do have a considerable amount of overtime that we built into our schedule that many EMS services have. And so we try to, people tend to look only at the hourly wage that we present to them. Right now, the starting wage for a paramedic is $14.55. Competitors usually have it around the $17 an hour range. Now you start factoring in that we have that built-in overtime. Right now with $14.55, that's a $48,000 a year if they work every bit of their overtime and they don't take any. Because every time they take time off, they lose that overtime wage, even if it's even with the PTO that they put in. But the others are pretty close. Usually around 50 is where we're kind of competing with on a lot of them. We do have we've reduced our, as far as vehicles are concerned, we have reduced our fleet. Used to have 7 ambulances, now we're down to 6. The plan is once we have the joint fire and EMS station that we hope opens up in the end of '24, we'll put 2 trucks there. We'll put 2 trucks in the main station in Garden, and then 2 trucks in Holcomb. So then every station will have a main unit and a backup unit if they need it. Last year we ran about close to 4,000 calls per year. We end up transporting about half, usually about a 50% transport rate of the people that we see and the people that we actually take to the hospital for that. So that is kind of steadily increasing over time. If you go back a few years, we used to average 8 calls a day. Now we're high 10s, almost 11 calls per day is what we average. Currently, I have, right now I have 10 either paramedics or will be paramedics soon. I have 3, and that doesn't include my shift supervisors. We put the shift supervisors in there. That moves up to 13. And then I have 3 AEMTs and 3 EMTs right now that are still very, very early in their goal to become a paramedic. So that's what I have there. Fuel is always an issue for us. You know, we do average about 50, the 3 main ambulances that we run, they average about 1,500 miles per month. And so and then the backup units are significantly less than that. But usually we average about almost 5,000 miles per month as a service, as far as the ambulances are concerned. You probably saw in my my narrative there, you know, we do have provide CPR training for the area, are involved in several committees such as local emergency planning committee, the regional trauma council, the member of SHIRT, which is the healthcare coalition, mainly with hospitals, but also involves other areas as well. And then also the what used to be called Homeland Security, it's like Southwest Kansas Regional Emergency Planning Committee. We have representatives for that as well. We do have an MOU there that we signed several months ago where we utilize the fire department to kind of help us out in the events that we do get short-staffed or we have ambulances busy. They are able to help us provide, they can provide some initial care for us until we get our ambulance there. They don't do any transporting at all, but they do kind of provide a first response for us. I think that our collaboration with the fire department, it never was really bad, but I think it's even better now. Work very well with Chief Ursick and have a really good relationship with Courtney Pruitt as well, Chief Pruitt with the police department. But our main goal there, we do have in the budget there is a position for the assistant director, which I don't have right now. So what I would like to do with that, my goal for that is to utilize that position into kind of a full-time training officer position, similar to what the fire department has as well, to make sure that our education program is staying current and staying competent, and that we are keeping the staff that we have up to speed on current medical procedures.
Larry?
Why'd you ask somebody else?
Because I'm on a roll here. I'm on a roll.
Somewhere I was looking that you had equipment to purchases. They're the same for next year. You don't think you'll see an increase in ambulance costs? I take that's what that is.
Well, so the plan there on that is that that a lot of equipment, when we turn in an ambulance, there's quite a bit of equipment that will pull over into that. But our goal here is if we go on a 7-year cycle where we try to either buy or remount an ambulance every year for 6 years. And then on the 7th year, we use that time to replace the admin vehicles that we have. And so if we can kind of continue that, then we will keep our ambulances in you know, if we can stick with a program like that, we can keep our ambulances with their miles within a reasonable range. Right now, I have, so we have 3 fairly new ambulances right now. I think all of them have less than, the 3 main ones that we use all have less than 30,000 miles on them. And I think we have a couple that are above 150. I have one really close to 100, and then a couple, I'm sorry, yeah, a couple, we have one that's right around 80, and then we have 2 that are just under 150,000.
Now, you've gone away from diesel ambulances.
Well, we're going back to that, though. It's great for those the van chassis ambulances. Those are great for those, but we can't do 4-wheel drive on those. I mean, technically you can. But it's really not worth it. It's an aftermarket update, and it's a kind of a hassle. So, it's nice to have at least 3. You know, at least have the option for our units to pull into a 4-wheel drive ambulance. So, if we stick with a van chassis on some, we'll probably use a gas engine. But if we go with those bigger F450, F550 trucks, then that's going to be a diesel. We do, you know, there are anticipated elevated maintenance costs on those, especially with the turbochargers on those diesels. You know, diesel engines, especially with turbochargers, don't like to be run hard and shut off right away, and it's kind of hard to get our people to. They don't like run when they pull into an ambulance bay. They don't like leave them in running. It gets exhaust into the ER, and so it's hard to get people to take care of those like that, like they need to be, because of the nature of our job.
Thank you.
Bob?
No questions, thank you, good report.
Dave?
Quick question about what's going to happen with the college program and trying to,
Though I'm happy with the college program. The instructor they have right now is pretty dynamite. Eve, if I'm going to mispronounce her name, Eve Kwiatkowski, I think is her last name. Eve Kwiatkowski, I think is how you pronounce her last name. She's a spectacular instructor, and so if they can continue with her, I've been in her classes a couple times. Very, very qualified instructor, and so if right now they're still struggling a little bit trying to get people to come in.
it's been kind of your bullpen to go to when you need help, is it not?
Yeah, but by the problem I run into with the paramedic program is usually they're either mine already, or they are already spoken for a surrounding service, and so we're just trying to move that down and try to encourage people from the EMT level of the younger crowd that maybe isn't quite committed yet.
You know, years ago, we discussed paying some tuition to help somebody go through a program with a commitment.
Yeah, I'm definitely open to that. I would love to do that. We do somewhat have a program similar to that with the utilization of the Education Incentive Grant through the Kansas State Board of EMS, where they'll pay a certain amount to help with tuition of those courses. That if you're a paramedic, it'll pay for just over $5,000. The program's considerably more expensive than that, but it does help with that. And then they have a 2-year commitment with me. And then there's EMT programs as well that come with a 1-year commitment.
That might be an investment worth considering. All right, that's it.
No questions from here.
I would offer a motion to take the EMS budget under advisement.
And there is a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Larry. Any further comments? If not, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion passes. Thank you, Skylar. Appreciate that. Susan, we're going to hear your budget request for the county attorney. And in the spirit of full disclosure, I have some handouts that I've given the fellow commissioners this morning. And the first two, and this is your copy, the first 2 pages are some comparative data that we just got over the weekend, and then the last page is some historical data for the department that we also just received this morning. So I wanted to make sure you had that because they may ask questions from that information.
And then I had gone ahead and made copies of the packets that I had emailed to you guys.
Already got it.
So,
Yeah, I've got mine.
yeah, okay. Anybody else?
I'll look at it.
I've got my
I can look at the,
Yeah.
I can find it here.
The difference would be is that the top letter was prepared after Rob
department head meeting to kind of let you guys know what our accomplishments had been for 2021, and then kind of where we saw our departments heading from there. So that is what the front letter, and that's where you guys need these packets, because you wouldn't have it.
Oh, the June 20, you're talking about the letter dated June 20?
Yeah,
I have, we
I have it.
we should have that. Yeah, it was sent to us.
It was, yeah, you sent it to us.
Because I do think it's important to note that we have tried to plan ahead with pretty much everything we've done by setting aside money when we've had it, and that's how we did our conversion from our old case management system to our new, was by setting aside those funds and then planning ahead, getting those funds available for us when we did our conversion January 10th of this year. And so we've been working through that data conversion, which is quite an undertaking. I know that our HR departments unfortunately had to do that a couple of times with their employee and payroll systems. And then I think the health department and the Register of Deeds went through that with ULI. And part of that system was to try to make it more accessible to our law enforcement partners. It's been very successful when working with the police department. They're now able to enter data into our portal, so we can go in and pick up a new case through that portal, and instead of having to either walk information back and forth or for them to access our system and us access their system, it's now kind of a one-stop shop. The only thing we haven't figured out yet is how to do that for video, audio, pictures, the things that are high volume, high internet sucking types of information, but we're working on it, and I do think it is making it a little bit more streamlined. The sheriff's department, we haven't quite gotten to the point where they're using the portal, but we're continuing to work on that and anticipate that by August, September, we should be in the process of having them enter into our system those new cases. It also helps when we're talking about shortages of people, because we're not duplicating efforts by having them enter data, us enter data, the court enter data. So now, like with the police department, they're initially entering that data, it comes into our case management system, and we can pick that up and not have to dual entry that. So that helps. Some, it's not perfect, but it does cut down on some of the time. So the other thing we've been working on is trying to eliminate old case files. We have an entire basement in that building that is full of files. So about 40%, well, really less than that, maybe 25 to 30% is actually usable space right now. It has a conference room, which isn't large enough to handle everyone in our office, and it's not good for training. We have a really tiny little kitchenette downstairs, and the balance, 2 bathrooms, and the balance of it is files. So we have started with some of the easy files, and now we are starting into the cases that we're literally going to have to hand go through to ensure that we have all the documentation that we need, that it's beyond our keep time, so to speak, and that if it's of historical value, we have to keep it forever. So those things we're going to try to turn over to the Historical Society, and then they can keep those big files. They're the ones who currently have the clutter files and things like that. But we haven't had what I would consider a notable or historical case since I've been in office, and I don't really recall one in the last maybe 10 years prior when John was in office. So we should be able to get rid of most of those cases. The goal being that by the end of 2024, we have our basement pretty much clear and that everything is electronic. So the other thing we've, pardon me, have been trying to do is to get on social media. A week ago, we actually got all of that put up. And so we do have a social media account on Facebook. That's where we started. Ultimately, we'll probably head to Instagram, Twitter, whatever the current hotspot is, because that changes. But our goal in that is to help inform the public, because we don't have a lot of news presence, not like we used to. And so the only information people are going to get is if it comes directly from us. And so that will be, we're gonna start out with new case filings, kind of definitions, and then notable sentencings. We will not publish every single sentence or every single person that we file a case on. It'll just be the more notable ones. And we're going to track that from both the police department and the sheriff's social media pages so that the public can get like a continuum of service, so to speak. So if there's a press release that comes out from the police department, we'll pick up on that and let the public know, yes, we filed these cases, or they've been sent back for further investigation. So, and then kind of track that through till sentencing. So the goals for the 2023 budget are to bring our wages in line with where the county's wage scale. And then we're trying to also get it to a point where we can recruit. I have included several letters within my packet from the 2 law schools in the state of Kansas, and then also someone that we had attempted to hire. And they basically let us know what it would take to bring them to Garden City at a minimum. I actually saw an ad for Guyman, Oklahoma. Their district attorney down there is starting salary is $75,000. So that's what we're seeing. And our base pay has been about $56,000 to $60,000. I have hired the last 2 people on as kind of interns or under a temporary license, and then had them study. And once they pass the bar, then we would increase that wage to $60,000. It's not going to be competitive. We're not going to be able to get people at that rate at this point here. Because they don't want to leave the eastern part of the state. That's the plain and simple piece of it. They see too much of an advantage to stay where they are. And so the only thing we have to offer them is money. We can't offer them all the social opportunities. And so I even think if we're equal to where some of the other counties are, we will still not be successful in recruiting them out here. We're going to have to be ahead of them to entice someone to even apply. And the last 3 employees that we've had have been through word of mouth. It's been through trying to be creative, taking on county attorneys from other smaller counties, allowing them to work part-time. The biggest problem with that is they're baby attorneys, and by that I mean they don't have a lot of experience. And so doing trial work for our high-level felonies is going to be difficult because we have just 2 or 3 of us that have actually had that experience. I also anticipate we may lose one because one of our judges is retiring, and he has gone up the last 2 or 3 times as an option for the governor to appoint. And I would anticipate that this time he may be the one that is chosen. So we'll be then 2 short. So we really need to be hiring not another baby attorney, but somebody with some really good experience that they can come in and bring our young attorneys along for trial experience. I did include a plan in that to do some building upgrades, and that's kind of to go along with the whole we're cleaning out the basement thing. We'd like to be able to plan for doing some construction over the next year or 2 to bring our basement into like a training facility, make it more victim friendly, more witness friendly for our jury trials, and even allow for some, like if we need to be doing them by video or for Zoom purposes, for COVID purposes, for whatever it is, that we kind of have a space that's designated for that, that's more environmentally friendly than having clutter and kids running around in the background if it happens to be a youth victim and mom's bringing the family to our office. We just don't have the ability at this point, and the courthouse isn't structured for it either, to have victims and our witnesses housed in our building awaiting their testimony time. So that is part of that long-range plan as well. And increasing our presence online, since it just started it's gonna take a while for us to get there, but we'll get there and be able to answer some questions for the public as well. I did take a look at, and I kind of listened to what our sheriff was telling us about statistics, and that kind of like goes into some of the things that I had planned to talk to you guys about too. And what I find interesting is the number of calls and what it translates to on our end. And these wouldn't be full numbers because I don't have them from the police department. But when he talks about getting 16,000 calls in a year, and then they're only filing, say, 1,100, and I'm roughly doing this because this isn't going to have all of the juvenile things in there either. But he says 755 criminal reports and 433 traffic cases. We do traffic from Holcomb, Garden, KHP, and our sheriff. And so his would only be a small portion of those 3,000 cases that we would have. But 755 criminal. And what that translates to on our end is we filed last year 637 criminal cases. So I'm just gonna guess that our police department would be at least double that amount because of where the location is and what the coverage is the police department has. And so if they're handing over, say, 1,500 cases to us a year, and the sheriff is handing over another 755, and we're only able to file 637, we know what that translates to. A third of the cases that are coming to us are not able to be filed. And that's just with regard to the criminal cases. And what I can tell you is that our juvenile and child in need of care cases have gone up significantly in the last 3 years. We used to be around 180 to 200 cases per year. Now we're at 365 in 2021. So that's almost doubled in the last 4 to 5 years, which is what I anticipated when we had a change in the juvenile bill with Senate Bill 367 and how they allowed for, I guess, criminal justice and services to handle our juvenile offenders. It's changed the game a lot, and it's increased a lot of the juvenile crime, in my opinion. So I think what you can see from where we were is the salaries, we're just trying to bring everything in line with the county's pay scale, and that's roughly 80 to 85% of the budget request. So I don't know if you guys have any questions.
I'm on a roll. Larry, you're going.
Okay, I'll ask you the easy one first.
Okay.
On your lower level design, I remember being down there one time, and it's nothing but just a huge room with files.
Right.
This new drawing you presented to us, where are the files all going?
Well, if you'll remember, part of the first part of my presentation was we're shredding those that can be shred, and those of historical value we will take to the Historical Society. The remaining ones we're gonna just probably utilize an office space. The plan is not to keep, most of they go back to like 1968, some of them, and a lot of them are just, if it's an old traffic case for speeding, I don't really see a reason why we're holding on to it. But I think, that's just, it's been a requirement, and then we've done the research to figure out what do we need to keep, what do we not need to keep, and so we have a shredding service that's been part of the budget. It started with that in this year's budget, and so we're utilizing that service to, they've come a couple of times and we've done a mass dump, and then they come monthly for us to kind of pick through those as we can so that we can eliminate those files. But it's really not changing too much of the structure of what's down there. It's reorganizing, or the bathrooms, for instance, remain the same. If you look where it says future office, that's all just taking out those files and adding in walls and doors. So a lot of it, the biggest change would be in that space, which is to the west of the bathrooms, between the bathrooms and the landing. Pardon?
The training room.
The training room, yes.
Next question, you were talking about, you know, getting, I guess the only comparison we really have in these comparison sheets is, that's east of us, so a long ways east would be Reno. They're, you know, similar size. Now Seward, you know, or Sedgwick is a little hard to compare that, but, I guess, you know, in Reno County, you look at them and we're ahead of them in salary and everything else looks to me like, if I'm reading this right.
I mean, I know that that's correct. I've spoken with multiple county attorneys across the state over the last 6 months. We're all experiencing the same struggle. He and I've had multiple conversations. He's running short of people too. I think it's one of those deals where we're all trying to figure out our way through things. The other thing that gets a little bit kind of complicated too is in a county like Riley County, they don't have a police department. It's a sheriff's department that covers the municipal, but they also have a very robust municipal program there as well. So they have 11 prosecutors in their municipal offices that do the misdemeanor work. And then their county attorneys are doing mostly the felonies or the felonies that combine with misdemeanors, because that's something that municipal prosecutors cannot do. So it's kind of, you're never comparing apples to oranges. It's pineapples, grapefruit, you throw a lemon in there every now and then. And that's something that I really struggle with, because when we look at how our caseloads have changed over the years, we are concentrating more on our felonies because that's where we are putting our efforts into, and less on some of the lesser types of crimes. And now that we have a municipal prosecutor back, we're probably going to be sending some of those municipal types of things back their direction when we can too. So yeah, no, I'm not going to disagree with any of it. I'd say all of them. There's multiples in this batch too that also have private practices. So the Ford County attorney, for instance, he's also covering, I think, 2 other counties. So his salary is coming from 3 separate counties. So not only does he have Ford County, I'm trying to think, I think he has Pawnee County and maybe one other. So that you're seeing some of those as well, just like our Greeley County attorney is also getting it from Sheridan. Is it Sheridan? There's 3 counties up that direction that he's gathering things from. And so it's really kind of, case number wise, we're not comparable with anyone in this area. The closest one we would be comparable with would be Reno County. And when we're talking per prosecutor, those vary hugely from county to county.
Well, the column, I take it says, cost rural population. Is that per case or?
I didn't do this form, so I have no idea of what.
I don't know. It's,
Which column are you talking about?
that third column over
That's just,
says $/ rural
yeah,
population.
I'm not sure what that column is. The one before that is the population of the county.
Yeah, that one's.
I would think it's the budget divided by
Must be
the population.
Dollars divided by the rural population, yeah. Is what I'm, yeah.
And that's, you know, that appears like we're pretty well funded. Compared, you know.
Yep. Yeah, that's what it is, budget dollars divided by population.
So I mean, I don't know. I just know what the challenge is.
I don't either.
Yeah, well, I didn't do this form, so.
You just,
Get it to relate to anything. So,
but, when you look at number of criminal filings in 19, so that's going back a few years, but I mean, it's, you know, some of these counties are fairly similar to us, and then some of them are way out of line.
Yeah.
Like Shawnee. Why would Shawnee
Well, and
weigh so many more criminals than?
Oh, they have a lot of.
Well, and a lot of it, I mean, here's the thing that I've discovered, because I've probably talked to 20 different county attorneys across the state. I've talked with 5 different law schools. And what you're getting is the fact that none of these numbers really are the same from county to county. And that's where you really can't compare them, because my case management system is not the same case management system that another county has. So if someone asked me, okay, can you pull up this? In the past, we couldn't have pulled that up. We'd have to do it by hand. We should be able to do a much better job now that we have our newer case management system. But yeah, I mean, it's all what goes into that number. I don't know. You know, do they include their truancy cases? Do they not include their truancy cases? Are they including their diversion cases on juveniles? Are they not including them? Are they including their pre-filing diversions? Are they not? I mean, we don't know what goes into those numbers for us to justify. I just know what it looks like on our end when we're preparing, you know, when we've got 8 murder cases that are sitting in our office. I've got 6 attorneys that can handle them. Actually, really don't. I have 2 that are handling juvenile cases. So now I'm down to 4 who can handle those. I know what kind of time that takes. You know, in addition with another 180 or 200 plus that are on their caseload, what does that translate to in work hours? What does that translate to? That's just how I look at this. And then also in speaking with all of the people on the hiring end, and what they're telling me is you're gonna have to start somewhere between 75 and 80, which I know is where Douglas County is starting theirs at 75. There are counties around Douglas County, and you're asking me to go to a map I just am not that familiar with, that are starting a brand new attorney at 80,000. I've got guys that up until 6 months ago had been in 5 years of practice of law and weren't making that as a county attorney. So I can't
You have to pay
start.
them more to live in Douglas County.
Yeah, for sure.
No, it's an honor to live in Douglas.
Well, you say that, but they also have a lot more to do. And so when you're trying to attract young people or people with families out here, we got to give them something.
I know when we were, you know, serving on the juvenile detention board, it's interesting listening to the various sheriffs around the room talk about their juvenile cases, and it is amazing that, you know, we built that facility for another child in need of care of addition, and then it's not being utilized like we thought it, you know, like the state promised that it would be. So now we want to look at something different, but it is amazing how this thing changes, and those sheriffs all say, well, yeah, this person, yeah, we know where this history is going because we know the family. So it's all, you know, they basically call them frequent flyers.
Well, I think for those of us who've been around more than just a couple of years, the pendulum, it's just like in education. The pendulum will swing from right to left, and then it comes back to the center for a while, and it starts swinging one direction or another. But I think for those of us who've been in it, we could see when the law changed, and essentially drilling it down to the bare bones, essentially it was like, yeah, county attorney, you can't file a criminal case against a juvenile. You have to send them immediately over to a pre-filing type of diversion program. And all of us were just kind of like, well, that's sort of like telling a kid they're not supposed to be out past curfew and then never having a punishment for them when they come home late. And we all know what it's like when you have kids at home with no rules. I mean, this is just on a grander scheme, and it made it more difficult to certify juveniles as adults that are committing adult crimes. And, you know, you see someone who has committed a very adult crime, and they're gonna, you know, maybe be incarcerated for 2.5 years, which if they were 20 years old, they'd have been in for 20 years. And those are things, and then you go, okay, so now you're getting out. What's that gonna translate to as an adult? I mean, they get away with things that they could not have gotten away with 10 years ago. And there's no, you know, there's not backup services either. We're talking mental health services, you know, drug and alcohol services. I mean, all the backup services really were diminished. It's been, 6 years now, Beth? About 6 years ago. And I think that translates to our numbers. You know, when we look at having 180 juvenile cases, and now we've got, or juvenile and child in need of care cases combined, and now we're looking at 365, that's doubled in 6 years. It should scare all of us.
Anything else, Larry?
Nope.
Bob?
You know, looking at your budget request, looking at the one that the staff, Robert and the staff have prepared, you know, they're basically right on top of one another. I think they have come back together to where they need to be. And I go back to looking at our history, and if we had been bringing our salaries along from 2020, if you will, and putting 5% on, we'd almost be at this point that you're requesting. But since we made a couple of big drops in between and then held the line for 2 years in a row, it appears all of a sudden that we have a phenomenal jump. So knowing and understanding what it's like to try to hire employees to come to Western Kansas, I think it's a real-world expense. We can do all the comparisons we want about the people in the east, but they have a different world from which to draw for employees. And I think this is a realistic budget, and I appreciate the information, both sides, because I think it gives us an eye-opening situation of what we really are experiencing. Thanks.
Dave?
Susan, I have a single question.
For sure.
Is money the only problem you have? That probably sounds a little strange, but is that the answer? If we,
I think there's a couple of things that we're seeing. There are some counties, I'll use Hamilton and Kearney counties for an example, whose health insurance programs are more robust than ours. So there is, I mean, and I know you guys would probably be a little bit shocked by that, but I think we're finding that too, that as or as I've spoken with other county attorneys around, well, some of them, maybe they're offering 70, but then they're getting 100% of their premiums with the same deductible that we're getting. Or, I mean, and so those translate to dollars for people too, if they're looking at going to a smaller community or they're looking at coming past that I-35 kind of line that's drawn in the sand, you know, they're looking at a more holistic package. But I think money is a big part, because what is it when you're coming out of law school and you have $250,000 plus in student loans, and you know you're going to have to pay anywhere from $500 to $1,000 a month back to the federal government for those loans? That translates, everything translates. You know, we talk about should we be, and part of that request ultimately is going to be what we do with our diversion funds, because can we use some of those to like start a loan repayment after they've been here a year? Are there some things that we could try to do elsewise? You know, otherwise, is it trying to recruit straight out of law school? The problem is I haven't been able to get the law schools to tell me who is attending school there from west of that I-35 line. You know, I've asked for those, you know, just like, I don't even want to name really. It's how many do you have, and could we offer these as scholarships? So I think they're being a little bit more savvy. And then I also think a lot of them are finding jobs outside of the legal field where they can get paid more money. And, you know, these guys are coming straight out of law school, able to go into corporate work at $170,000 a year. We can't compete with that, I understand, but what are the things we could do? I think raising salary is one of them, possibly some sort of grow your own type program, loan repayment. I think there's a lot of things that could go into that, but you know, ultimately you can't compete with the social life and the activities within an hour-and-a-half radius of darn near every place east of Salina. So the only thing we've got is money and benefits.
well, I'm perplexed at what the fix is. I look here at the number of attorneys and staff you have, the number of cases you have, the salaries you have, and it looks to me like you have it pretty good compared to some others. Are they having a worse time trying to hire help than you are? Or?
I think we're all in the same boat. To a person, none of them were fully staffed that I spoke with. And that included Franklin County, Franklin County, Seward County is not fully staffed. I don't believe that Ford County is fully staffed. Where's the casino? Down south. Oh, the southern counties along the Oklahoma border, they're not fully staffed either. The ones that are maintaining those staffs are those that are in desirable, what I would say desirable locations. They're able to have legal interns, and I'm talking, they'll have 10 to 16 interns that will intern for them in Jackson, or Johnson, Wyandotte, Sedgwick, Riley, Douglas, Shawnee. They all have intern programs. Well, those intern programs are like a feeder program. You know, they'll pick the cream of that crop and then they release the rest of them to do whatever else it is that they're gonna do. But they just, I mean, the thing is, I've asked the guys at Washburn, KU, I've been to Tulsa, Oklahoma City, Norman, and they're just like, they all want metropolitan areas. That's just the long and short of it. That's where they want to live. But I think you're seeing that on the defense bar side too, because you've got a very limited number of people. I mean, I don't know for those of you that are involved in negotiating the contract on the Super 6, but you know, to find 6 attorneys willing to take on a contract here to, it's tough, and you don't have 6 in Finney County. You're reaching out to, what is it, Tugs and Oakley, Hugoton. I think there's another one up in Oakley. We have 2 over in Hayes that are coming over for our felony work. But when you're looking at, they're gonna come here once to twice a month. That's all they've agreed to drive here to take on these cases. Well, you know, maybe some of these cases, maybe some counties can turn their cases over in 3 months because they've got attorneys that are right there that they can move these cases along. We continue these cases all the time because, well, the attorney's not available, or they got stuck in another hearing in such and such a county because they're trying to cover multiple counties, and so then our case gets bumped another 2-3 months. And so what some are turning over in 3 months, we're maybe turning over once a year.
Dave, did you have other?
I have one kind of comment. We've heard from 5 department heads, all 5 of you saying the same thing.
Yep.
Can't hire enough help. We can't afford to hire them or whatever. And I think that's not just a Finney County problem. I think that's countrywide. And so I don't know if money is the answer to everything or not. I wonder if we need to consider at some point some other incentives, like, as I mentioned, to Skylar, scholarships, something to entice people to start building a bullpen. So anyway, I appreciate your.
But I think some of that may start when things kind of get a little bit more back to normal and trying to get into our high schools and see if we can't try to start recruit younger. I don't know what the answer is, but I do know I have 3 young people in my household, of which two of the 3 may come back. One, because they're strictly we're an agriculture family, and he'll come back to do what he's done with his dad. But when you look at the class of 400 and some that they graduated with, how many of those are going to come back here? Even though they're in medical school, they're going to PA school, they're accountants, they're lawyers, they're psychologists, they're whatever they are, they're not coming back here.
I have a grandson who just graduated with a degree from Virginia Tech as a civil engineer. And I said, by the way, grandson, we're looking for a county engineer. And on the serious side, we discussed our salary, and he said, Grandpa, you're about talking about relocation expenses for those on the East Coast. And he went to a job in Jacksonville, Florida. So, yeah, as I say, it's a countrywide problem. It isn't just Finney County. So, thank you.
Susan, thank you for your presentation, and we're going to see if they want to take this under advisement.
I move that we'll take this under advisement.
There is a motion. Is there a second? Seconded by Bob. Any further comments from the board? All in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion passes. Thank you, Susan.
Thank you.
And
Mike, we have an expert out there, kind of from the other side of the street, if you will. I'm curious whether they're experiencing the same kind of thing on personnel.
from the city?
Yes.
From the city standpoint?
I was looking for the expert. Yeah, in many ways. I've been experiencing it over the last year or two. I would say we're in a good position now. We made a little bit of a change, probably a little too, well, wasn't too early because it needed to be done, but we did it prior to there being an environment where there was something other than 1.5% inflation. So glad we made that change. That was the good news, and it did help a little bit. The other part of it is, how quickly that can come out of balance in an environment with 7, 8, 9% inflation. So experiencing a little bit, but we're back a little bit closer to full employment in some key areas. Some other areas that not so much. And yeah, probably a little bit better shape than we were last year at this time. Doing a lot of other things. I think Commissioner Jones's question about is money the only thing? It's not. I mean, what we found out, it's not. So we maybe shored up some things on some money side, but are trying to do a lot of things as far as workplace culture-wise that are probably some things we should have been doing a long time ago, but are paying a little closer attention to now that maybe we can't necessarily compete with some from a dollar standpoint, but if we can preserve those people that have made the decision to work for us to feel good about where they work and feel like they're tied into the mission of the organization a little closer, we're paying a lot more attention to that now, and I think that's paying dividends as far as retention. And hopefully word gets out, and maybe it helps us a little bit in recruitment too.
Matt, and you go ahead and have a seat. I'm just going to make a comment following up, but to Dave's comment, to something you just said a minute ago, to me, it's more than just pay. It's more than just benefits. It's work environment and how well somebody likes coming to work, or they don't even consider it work when they leave their house in the morning. So yeah, I agree. There's multiple things in response to Dave's question too. To me, it's more than just the financial piece of it. I'm going to take chairman prerogative here, and we have on our budget thing that Robert is going to give us a summary of the outside agency things, and we'll come back to that in a minute. But out of respect for Matt and Danelle, I know they've been sitting here a long time. But Robert, I think in your report, you were going to report to us an agreement that is coming due with the Humane Society or the Animal Shelter. And while Matt's here, he may have some input on that. So I would like to go to that piece of your report first, and then we'll come back to the budget thing after we take a brief break. But if you would, please, out of respect for Matt and Danelle being here.
Sure. Well, quite simply, I think you have some information in your packet that relates to a upcoming renewal of an agreement, interlocal agreement.
Did we get that in the packet? I didn't see it in the packet.
Okay, well.
Yeah, we just need
Well, imagine there is one. It's, anyway, it's due for, it expires the end of this year. The approximate cost to the county is somewhere around $73,000. That's their, on an annual basis. That's their apportionment of the total budget of that organization, which is somewhere approximately around 30% of their total budget. Couple things in the new proposal is one, an increase in the budget from approximately $270,000 up to about $300,000. This would be a 3-year interlocal agreement. with an annual, anticipated annual escalation in there somewhere around maybe 2.5% is what the city may be considering in that. Once again, this is a contract budget, if you will, that is paid out of the sheriff's budget. And at that point in time, we need to consider it, try and nail down a budget number for both us and the city on that project. Our estimated cost is somewhere around, with the new agreement, would be somewhere around $90,000. So with that, then I think Matt wanted to provide a little bit of background on this and go let you guys go from there.
And we appreciate your patience, Matt and Danelle, and I don't know which one of you is wanting to speak or is willing to speak to this, but I think a little historical perspective and maybe making sure that we have the numbers correct, but it's my understanding that they are asking for an increase, they're asking for an escalation clause, they're asking for a 3-year commitment, and so forth. So if one of you would want to speak to that, we didn't have it as a budget, as an agenda item today. It probably will be an agenda item on our first July meeting, but anything you would like to add as we consider whether or not we're in favor of that increase?
If it would be all right with you, I'll do the history part, and then Danielle can update you on where we're at with the numbers and confirm. Robert's got it spot on. So the arrangement from the shelter on Isabel was 50-50 in expenses. It was already a long since paid off building, I'm sure. I don't know how many of you were ever in that, but that motivated the city commission to identify a new shelter design. And at that point in time, the city operated the shelter and billed out the expenses 50-50 to the county. The city and county talked about a project that was estimated at that time to cost $500,000. We were going to build it on existing city-owned property, take up a footprint of what is now shared by the shelter and our solid waste department. The organizations agreed to that, not without some level of controversy or reluctance. And I can't remember if it was at that moment or the subsequent moment that a payment concept was worked out. We'll get to that in a second. So bids come in for the project. They end up being over by a lot. I think this is around 2007, 2008, and you start to see material expenses go through the roof. Comes in at $800,000 plus. We try to work on some different choices, eliminate some things, get the project down to where it's going to be $700 and some thousand. I think the manufacturer or the contractor at the time had volunteered some of their work as well to get that cost down. At that point in time, the county said, no, we're not moving forward. Kind of in an effort to keep the project together, the city commission said, you know, what if we absorb 100% of the overage, the county stays in at $250,000. And the payment plan was a 10-year, $25,000 a year. So a 10-year zero interest loan on the county share. So the city paid 100% of the cost of the project that exceeded its construction estimate by 50% or so. And then kept the county share hold harmless and created a zero interest 10-year loan payment plan for that. Following that, we continued to operate the shelter. The city continued to operate the shelter. All along, beginning to have conversations with the Humane Society, who was growing their membership, a little bit more active interest, especially now that we had the facility over there and not the facility on Isabel. and they were gaining some capacity to, perhaps take on the shelter. The advantages to the Humane Society and their membership in doing that is had a little bit more say in what happens to the animals when they're there, and that was appealing to them. They could take certain types of animals to no-kill safe havens, shelters, environments that take on several dogs and several dogs of specific breeds and those types of things. And also they could model the adoptions and sort of end-of-life services and those types of things in a way that would create some income for them. Not necessarily aligned with how a public organization runs a animal control-centered shelter. Ended up working out a deal, and at that point in time, we worked out the first of the agreement that's ultimately coming back to you because it's at its three-year cycle at the end of 2022. At that point in time, it was difficult in the discussions with the administrator at the time, sort of behind the scenes, and then ultimately what the commissions worked out. It was going to be difficult to do a 50-50 partnership again. Not because 50-50 was the wrong number, it was just, it wasn't a mutually agreeable number to both entities. So the 70-30 split was worked out. And while I don't necessarily subscribe to the logic behind it, it is one data source that you can look at. The 70-30 was somewhat referenced to a 3-year look back percentage-wise and then rounded to the percentage of animals turned in by an animal control officer from the county versus the 2 animal control officers working for the city of Garden City. I think the highest one, it was about 46-55, and the lowest one was about 25-75 in that 3-year look back. That's how we arrived at the 70-30 number. Our interest at this point in time, I don't think there's anything irresponsible in the Humane Society's request. I mean, we are inclined to move forward with them. It's in our interest that they continue to operate it. It's in their interest to sign an agreement that allows them to recover their costs. But what I don't want to do, and that's why, obviously we need to visit with you guys, and we reached out to Robert in April, is say, hey, even though we're 7 months out, we're both adopting budgets in a couple months. Let's, we're inclined to say yes to this, but we're not inclined to say yes to this by ourselves. So provided we can work out the terms of an interlocal agreement, I think we can move forward with the Humane Society agreement. So that's the background. Any questions on background before Danielle tells you where, because there were some things in what they requested that we said let's not talk about the big number, the money number. The terms, the multi-year term is important to us because I don't think we want to be trying to do this 3-way dance every summer. So a multi-year agreement was important to us. They probably didn't want to be stuck to fix the same fixed price for an elongated period of time, which is why they wanted to come back every year. We said, well, maybe we can work out kind of an escalator or something like that. And so Danielle can.
Well, and this may be for Danielle, but I'm going to start with you, Matt, and if you need to turn it over to her, that's fine.
Yep.
The first thing that came to my mind when Robert introduced the thought that there is an agreement that needs to be renewed or rescinded, or not rescinded, but ended, is, and you used the phrase a minute ago, it's not unreasonable for the Humane Society to want to cover their costs, and I get that, or recover their costs. Mm-hmm. But is the city verifying that what they're asking in the agreement is covering their costs, or they're getting funds from other places, I believe, too, from fundraisers?
Sure.
Or what kind of a verification process is the city using to know that this is a reasonable?
Yeah, Danielle can go into that. They are required, or, upon request, to show us their financials, and they showed us their financials when they gave us their review. We don't put them through an audit. We don't, scrutinize those expenses to the degree we would our own operations. But, when we ask for their financials, they're required under the terms of the agreement to give them to us, and that would continue in the new agreement. And we had some discussions about what that might look like. I do think, well, I'll let Danielle step in and talk about kind of some of the other things we're looking at, but that's exhausted my knowledge. Let me get Danielle up here.
Hey, that's quite a bit of knowledge. That's more than I had.
All right. Well, good morning. Thanks for letting us kind of talk on this topic a little bit. So on the kind of technical side of things, like Matt and Robert both alluded to, 3-year agreement coming up at the close of that current agreement at the end of this year. So with that, all of the numbers that Robert identified were accurate, and Robert and I kind of started talking about this back in May when the request from the Humane Society came forward. So from the kind of the technical side of it, we as the city have an agreement with the Humane Society to provide these services, and as part of that, what Matt alluded to, there's a requirement of them to provide us that financial information upon request. There's also a provision within that agreement that they provide an annual report to our city commission. So we haven't necessarily been very diligent in that effort in the last couple years, but they did come to a meeting earlier this year, and we're working with them to get that more regular so that they're providing those updates to the city commission with a certain level of regularity. So those are a couple of the provisions with the agreement between the city and the Humane Society. Then we also have an interlocal agreement with you all, which is what will be coming before you all for consideration, that kind of talks about this other side of it related to kind of the funding piece of it. So like Matt had alluded to, we had kind of kept that 70-30 split between the city and the county. The Humane Society did request a couple other items that may impact you all as well that we've been working through. So one of them is some dedicated space that used to be at the is currently at the Humane Society for the animal control officers, both for the city and the county to utilize. It sounds like in talking with those folks, it's not heavily utilized, and the Humane Society is in need of some additional space. So we thought that was an opportunity where we could come together, since our officers are not using it very regularly, to remove that provision of the agreement so that they can utilize some more office space for the folks who are in and out of that facility every day. So that was one of the other kind of non-financial components of that agreement that they requested. They also did request an annual agreement, but again, as Matt alluded to, we thought including an escalator in there to recognize that we do see typically an increase in costs over time that we experience on the city, you all experience as the county, and they are experiencing as well. So we thought that was a better way to approach that than to come before you every year and try to get that kind of 3-way agreement renegotiated. So that's kind of the technical side of it. We've had conversations with the Humane Society, so we will be updating those agreements, bringing it back before you all for consideration at a later point this year. But from a technical side of it, that's kind of where we're at, is in that drafting phase. Happy to answer any questions.
Excuse me, and yes, they may have questions, but I want to explain one thing. The reason that it's as a report today and not as an agenda item is Robert had called it to my attention that these negotiations were going on. There were some things that that the city has been negotiating with Humane Society, and I wanted our board to be aware of it before it becomes an agenda item, which will be next meeting, which will be the 5th of July. It will be an agenda item. So questions that you might have or things that you would like for them to bring to us or not bring to us when it is an agenda item next meeting. I just simply wanted this to be informational as a report to us. And this time, Larry, out of deference to you, I will go to Dave first. Dave, any questions?
I don't really. I happen to be a board, or not a board, I happen to be a member over there because my wife, before she passed away, ordered that, and so I appreciate what you guys do. I think your 70-30 might be discussed a little, because I think some of those county animals actually were city animals that were carried out and dumped out.
Turns out they don't abide by those lines.
We won't discuss that today. I appreciate what.
Yeah, they haven't seen that
Absolutely.
hidden tape in the ground. No,
Wait a minute, are they citizens of Finney
Yeah.
County or Garden City?
well,
Using your term citizens.
contrary to being people, they are animals. And no,
I think, one of the keys would be, as we're in the middle of this budget type deal, and it's talking about something that's gonna be 23, I think the relative numbers would be the key element that, I think we ought to see before. Because, on our July 5th, we're getting pretty close to the end of when we have to have our numbers, so that would be the only thing I'd kind of like a relative feel as to what those numbers are.
Okay. Larry? Oh, okay.
I think we can get those to you. I know Robert's asked for those as well, anticipating that you all would want them. Keep in mind, when we had those numbers available to us before, they were based off of city and county ACO numbers and our operation of the shelter. So that's, the Humane Society they've been trying to learn how to run a shelter and haven't been necessarily doing some of the, this one belonged to this one belonged to this one. I think, so the Humane Society has that for a few months. I think we could possibly back out some ACO data that we have and presume some things. It won't be necessarily as accurate as before, but I think it would give you the delta between what our ACO numbers report and what the Humane Society reports, and assuming that there wasn't anything just administratively lost in the way things are counted, because the other shelters that may bring animals to the shelter that aren't from Finney County is so small that we could just presume that the balance was that. On that split, though, I'll just leave this with you. If it was dedicated to the taxpayer perspective, and you were looking at it either from population or from assessed valuation, the best way to represent a 70-30 split is to do a 50-50 partnership. That isn't what's being asked. If you do a 70-30 partnership, it ends up financially being closer to 90-10.
Valid point. And to state one of the principles within policy governance, talking about this measurement that you're trying to put together for responding to these questions, a crude measure of the right thing beats a precise measure of the wrong thing. So I'm okay with a crude measurements is my point. So.
Another interesting fact, maybe not interesting to me, the first time I was looking in old emails and old files and found a 2004 memo where the same question had been asked. I don't know, maybe we were arguing about price of dog food or something back when we were running the shelter on Isabel. It was determined that the number of animals in the county was around 35%, and the numbers were in the city were 65%. So, that number has somewhat stayed in the ballpark for 20 years. I don't know that there's been dramatically more county dogs come into the city since that time. Or vice versa.
Twist that.
Yeah.
Did you check their origin?
Appreciate that. Larry, I haven't forgotten you.
I thought we were done with
Well, we will.
projects, because I was probably one of the dissenters years ago when we were talking about all this.
Probably.
Yeah. My only problem I have with this deal is when you say, well, they'll let them recover their costs. Where's the incentive of them to be efficient? Granted, they do have a fundraising arm that because I'm always seeing obits that say have donations to the Humane Society. So you surely see those that come through there as a fund source. It's just hard to convince me that we need to spend a lot of money on taxpayer money on shelter animals out in the county. But I've had this argument so many times I'm about to give up.
You're going to lose, Larry, so.
I know.
Well, any additional information that you might want to gather in the next couple of weeks, and we do next meet on that Tuesday, the morning. I think you guys meet in the afternoon probably that day. right after the 4th of July. But that morning, we will meet, and it will be an agenda item to give you a final decision on what our number will be.
Great. And we can provide a more robust report for you all at that time that
Or if
can
you
be
think of
included in the
something else
packet.
that maybe we should be considering, feel free to insert that. Yeah.
Yep,
Thank you.
absolutely will do. Thank you very much.
Appreciate your patience and waiting today, so.
Can I,
Oh.
I'm sorry, I'm
No,
really
no.
sorry. You brought up at the start of the meeting, birds, which reminded me that I failed to put it on tomorrow's agenda. The mayor had asked for that, so we will amend our agenda to take that up. I'm a little surprised that the interpretation of that meeting was that your stakeholders, which I'm not sure who outside of us was the other stakeholders that were there, was that there wasn't support. There wasn't a proposal, first of all. I mean, you did not ask the city of anything. To this point, there were several of us in the room that this was the first time we were invited in on the discussion. And so found it to be informative. There were a lot of questions that asked if there was some availability of information or willingness to explore some information outside of the anecdotal evidence that had been suggested. I think absorbing the comments in addition to what was provided in writing by the gentleman from the federal agency that is escaping me, yeah, that was good information. It sounded like there may be follow-up discussions. So we will gauge, and maybe your observations are spot on. I don't know. We'll find out tomorrow, but I think it may be interesting. They may be interested in what the balance of the county commission's opinions are. If you aren't interested, or you aren't interested because you thought the city wasn't interested, I can carry that message over, or we can just hit pause and wait and see what the city commission says. But that was my failure, because Mayor Dick had asked me to say, I don't know what we're going to ask because nothing was asked of us, but we ought to at least put it on the agenda to get a reaction, because that's what the chairman had intended. His understanding of your intention was for us to give a reaction, whatever it's based on.
Right, and you're absolutely right. There was no official request from the county to the city, and no.
Or unofficial, yeah.
No proposal,
No.
It was an informational meeting to see what the people who had come out and done the field work, what they assessed and so forth. So you're absolutely right in that observation. And what I'm taking away from this, Matt, if you want to relay this to your body tomorrow, your commission body tomorrow, is that there may need to be some additional information gathered within the community, within the Finney County, on the interest in trying to address it. And then secondly, the funding. If there is enough interest in addressing it, and Jason's proposal that he laid out to us, or he had three ways to address that. If any of them make sense, who's going to be the funder or funders? And I think that's so. How widespread is the interest, and what are the sources of funding? I keep hearing is the two issues.
Yeah. So we'll maybe get some opportunity for the five of them to give individual reactions to that question. Thank you.
Oh, I appreciate your.
Thanks for scooting us up.
I think it was, what, 70% were the birds were in the city?
Oh. There we go. Yeah. Thank you, Matt. I appreciate it. And Stephanie.
Yes, I have something to add to the Humane Society agreement. So I do the billing for building maintenance. We'll get receipts in for maintenance on that building. I believe when we relooked at those agreements, we didn't have anything on the county side of it to provide maintenance for that building, but we have been. So you guys might want to take that into consideration. I think it was just unspoken over the past few years that the county would provide the maintenance on that building as part of our portion of the agreement, so.
So, Danelle and Robert, it sounds like Stephanie needs to be included in the discussion, in the conversation. Yeah. All right, we're going to take a 10-minute break, and then we're going to come back.
Now, we might as well finish.
Well, because your reports may take so long. We're going to take about a 10-minute break, come back 11:45, and then we're going to finish this thing up in record time.
Always my fault, you know, you notice that?
Well, Dwayne's not here.
I know. I don't know,
It's his day.
because Dwayne's
It was
gone
on the
today.
agenda.
Can't pick it.
Easy mark, yeah. So let's, start by going back to the budget things for a little bit and, any overarching comments that you want to make, Robert, but, particularly, or not particularly, specifically, it says on our agenda that you have a summary of the outside agency request, and so I want to make sure we, touch base on that.
I believe it's in the books, right at the front of the books that were on your desk this morning.
Yeah, yeah, I did see the books, I didn't.
There is a summary, the very first page should be a summary.
Budget summary, but it's blank.
Sorry, gives you some historical information on the last few years.
Budget summary.
That was Gina. She's not in the room.
Budget summary? Yeah. I've got it now. Sorry.
This is the ending part of the budget, discussion, because we, wanted to have the city visit on that.
Megan have it?
We can get her a copy.
I'm looking out for you over there in the corner.
Robert, go ahead.
What I wanted to touch base with you on this is, in essence, you went through the budget presentations for all of these entities, and we're getting to a point where we need to start figuring out what you're willing to fund at this point in time. Oftentimes, you don't, for outside agencies, you don't from what I have seen over the last 3 years now, you don't deviate a whole lot from what you've done in prior years. So, and once again, if that's the direction we're heading here, because I've got to start fine tuning this thing to provide Dory where we're going to be at by July 20th, and. So hopefully throughout this week here, barring any extensive interruptions, then we should be able to get to that point by your meeting on the 5th, where we can begin to really start honing in on some of it. And so that is my review. And in terms of a question, would you want me to go ahead and with my assumption to place these back to where you have in prior years, or do you want to just by way of start putting them in the budget so we know where we're at financially on all this?
Put them back.
So if I'm hearing your question correctly.
What values do you want?
Do we want to have you insert what they've requested, or rather than that, have you insert what was last year's funded?
Yeah. What's your pleasure on this here?
Right.
Yeah.
So how do you want him to proceed with regard to inserting these outside agencies into the budget process this year?
Personally, I'd rather have it actual figures, and that's usually what we've kind of, you see a precedence of what we've done in the past few years. I'd be more in tune to that than what they request, because sometimes the requests are.
Okay,
Well, a couple of them were quite a bit higher than what we've actually done. Several of them were close to what they were funded last year, if not the same as what was funded last year.
correct. And your half two is your library, of course.
Yeah.
Right.
That's an agreement that you currently have.
Right.
The convention and visitors, that's kind of a separate.
Yeah, CVB, that's an estimate on bed tax. So I mean,
That can be pulled out of there essentially.
Correct. It is an outside agency that we do, that the county does fund, but it's non-ad valorem tax related.
Correct.
At the library, I know a little bit about, you know, one year we funded that under what the contract was. And we kind of got a two-pronged problem over there to fund. One of them is what the voters told us was a minimum, and the other is what that LS&S contract is, and this had an escalator in it. And so we can fund that short, but then they just carry that over and still bill the library for.
Is that resolution in our book? I didn't look through that information. I see you thumbing through it, Dory, but I was thinking it was up to that mill levy, not a minimum of that mill levy.
For the library?
For the
Not to
library.
exceed 1.9.
Not to exceed, not a minimum, rather than a minimum is what I'm saying.
Okay.
That is true.
Yeah, not to exceed 1 point whatever. Yeah. I was thinking that was, you've got that in, is that in the pocket of those notebooks, Dory? Is that where you're getting that information?
Yes, I believe so.
Okay. While she's looking it up on the library, Larry has suggested that Robert plug in numbers that are more in line with what we funded in the past year or so. Is there any dispute to that? Any disagreement to doing that?
I think, I'm kind of curious on economic development. That resolution that's there, is it like $0.25 Is that what that is? And yet, they've been funded at a higher level according to the audit.
Not through ad valorem tax?
No, not, but I mean, well, I think there was some additional funds out of the general fund or something that it was supplemented, because I think according to the audit in 21, it was 185.
Yes, and they had,
The budget.
But isn't one of our contributions to their budget for their operations and the other for the catch-it fund or whatever they call it?
Economic development incentives?
Well, no, there's an incentive, there's another piece of money back there that quote-unquote deal-making fund that is in excess, and the city contributes to that. But I don't,
That's separate from
the 2022 actual of 125, I don't think that's even the $0.25, is it? And that would be my only one, is that, you know, maybe not go all the way to where they had asked, but certainly not less than they had last year, because I think the impact that they've had on the community is pretty positive.
Why, well, Bob raises one point, and it ties to the library as well. We want to make sure that we're doing what our statutes or our resolutions have instructed us to do. So, yeah, we need to plug in that number, whatever it is, for whatever agencies. No question about that, whether it be the library, economic development, or XYZ.
Yeah, I think those are the only two that are set up by resolution.
I think so. That's the only ones I recall right now.
And
Is it
then-
senior center also?
I don't know that it had a maximum.
So I guess in answer to your question, Robert, so we can move along, is to plug in numbers that are more alike to last year, keeping in mind statutes and resolutions with regard to funding, and rather than what the requests were from each of the agencies. Does that make sense?
yes, it does. Answer your question on the economic development, the final assessed valuation for 22 was $483,273,244.
So $1 million was 480.
So
Yeah, so
So
Quarter,
quarter of a mil is less than 125,000.
yeah.
But we use the estimated value to set it, which traditionally is almost always higher. So if I remember correctly, it was just under 500 million last year,
Okay.
and which allowed us to go up to about 125. It's, in actuality, it should have been about 124 and some change. So because I think it was around 498 million last year was the estimate. Like like this year, I believe we're at 544 million is the
And that would be before the TIF adjustment.
correct. Yep.
Okay. All right. Anything else on the outside agencies? Anything else you need guidance on at this point?
Nope, those are fine.
Okay.
Those are fine.
You know, you look at SDSI and, you know,
Yeah.
their request is, you know, you look back and see what we've done in the past. Because if you did it, their request,
Well, and their request is always quite a bit
Yeah,
higher than
yes.
what we allocate, yeah.
Yep. Okay.
Yeah, so closer to the allocation than
Yep.
the request.
closer to reality.
Okay.
And then we can blame you.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Accountability stops with the,
I thought we were picking on Larry though today. So
Thank you.
no, we're going to, since we're after break here, we'll take it easy on Larry.
Okay. The
Yeah,
other
and then,
thing.
was there anything else from a budget perspective?
No.
Okay, so now, to help Megan and follow our trend here, the thing with the Humane Society was in Robert's report, but we needed to accommodate the city. So now back to Robert's report.
Did want to make sure that you were all aware that we did receive confirmation approval on the RHID. So that is, that's another check mark. Did receive I think a couple of meetings ago, I had informed you that we're one of many counties that are being audited on our Spark Surge grant. That had to do with the IT. As of Friday, we provided them with up-to-date information, and they'll get back to us if there's anything additional. We just, that's why it's so important to, when we're provided these federal funds, to make sure that we follow the proper process of documentation and getting agreements signed and so forth. On the child care grant that, well, I call it a grant, it's actually a sub-grantee agreement. We provided back to that organization back in late February, early March, received it back last Friday, sent it off to get reviewed. There's still one signature page still needs to be signed off on, and the others initialed, and so I sent that back last week and just asked them, please just finish executing that. And then at that point in time, we can cut the check for them. So we're keeping all the I's dotted and T's crossed.
That's the 600,000?
That's that 600,000, that's correct there. From what I understand, the second half of the ARPA funds will become available later on this month. So some of them may have already received that. So I was looking online to yesterday to try and determine if we need to do anything special to get that. As Kurt reported during his budgeting process, we did have a review done of all the sewer districts to include the new pump station. The specs are being drawn for the going out to bid on all those for those improvements. Once again, those will be funded through the ARPA funds as well. Also, throughout the budget process, as you heard, each one of the departments mentioned that our office, and particularly the payroll and HR department, is working on updating of the wage scale. We've met with a few of the departments, as you've heard Sheriff Mike indicate, and we should have something pending having enough time to do everything. We should have something to you here pretty shortly for your consideration. It would be in essence adopting a new pay scale and tweaking the pay policy a little bit as well. But that's coming up during this budgeting process as well. A question for the commission is that, as you saw in the past 2 years, we've not had all of the departments come in and make a presentation. We usually focus on the larger departments and so forth. I still plan on doing that this year unless I hear differently. You'll have the full budget document in front of you, but for example, when you have departments where their budgets may be $250,000, $300,000, whatever the case may be, with most of it being in the wage line item, and a fraction of it being in, like contractual services or things like that. Those always seem to be kind of a matter of fact. So if you don't mind, we'll continue on in that process. I think in general, the feedback that I've received the first 2 years is that you were fine with that process.
So the question that he's asking is, are we still fine with that? His not having the smaller departments make personal presentations. Still okay with that?
Well, I lean the other way, but then that's never been a secret before.
We're just trying to give him consensus here today. It's not a formal vote.
That's fine with the large departments. Those are the ones that we were most concerned with, and those are the ones where we used to cut the most anyway, so.
And you probably get the most feedback from the general public on those departments as well.
Bob?
Yeah, I think that's fine, as long as we have the information. It'd be nice to look at it, and, and the other thing on this wage type deal, I would assume somewhere around 65 to 70% of all county expenses are salaries.
That's probably pretty close.
So basically, we start learning, okay, a 1% increase is this much money, and
Okay.
so we can kind of relatively see what impact we're talking as we go back and forth on that.
Correct, yes.
That enough guidance for you?
Yes.
Okay. Anything else?
I have a question,
No.
please.
Oh, thank you.
No, that's fine. I just want to make sure you got the rest of his report done.
Mr. Chairman, may
Yes.
I ask a question to Robert?
Yep.
Did they hire an assistant for Paul, emergency management?
They are interviewing a couple of individuals for Paul. Yep.
Thank you.
So now we're going to move in. Oh, well, Linda, did you have anything from a counselor's perspective this time? Do we have a date set for the sale, delinquent tax sale?
No, no, I'm still working with Trista on getting those properties finalized. I mean, as far as my week, the big event was the CLE for the county counselor, did that online. Good information about keeping you guys in line during executive sessions. So I look forward to that opportunity. No. I'm just joking. Yeah, working on this, getting that poor sewer district, that paperwork and that process moving forward. That's mostly what's going on.
Any questions to Linda? Dave, you want to start the commissioner reports?
Hey, you gonna leave Larry out of the mix?
We're going to go left to right, but he will not be left out today. Yeah, I'll make sure.
I have a handful of things to report on. John Wheeler's contact, we've already discussed, today and taken action on, so I'll skip over that. Did attend the airport groundbreaking for the new terminal. It didn't actually have any ground to break, but everybody stood around holding a sledgehammer, and I think Megan even got a picture of him. She put it in the paper showing 4 city commissioners, one was missing, holding a sledgehammer. The Beef Empire Days been kind of ongoing for some couple weeks or whatever. I've attended the parade and then the Buffalo Jones poetry presentation, which I have to tell you, I've known Larry Cole. He worked for me for many years, and he portrays Buffalo Jones, but he started the presentation of that poetry Friday night with about 20 minutes. He shared information I've never heard before, and it'd be interesting to have him because that guy is an encyclopedia about Buffalo Jones. But at one time, the number of buffalo bison free-ranging in the United States got down to incredibly low numbers, like 2,000, 2,500, whatever. And Buffalo Jones went to Canada and Montana and roped calves, brought those back. He had a ranch somewhere here southeast of town. And then he went to Texas and that way so he had a DNA so that we didn't have the same DNA, and he brought back calves from there and raised buffalo. And the point I'm getting to is that Larry says now today, over 90% of all of the several million head of bison in the United States trace their DNA back to that ranch in Finney County, Kansas. And that is absolutely incredible, the amount of information. So on a week ago, on the 13th at 4:15, got a call that we had a fire and they needed a declaration in order to get some state assets, and in the chairman's absence or incapacity, as the law says, I said yay, and then they got a hold of him, so we got the thing well declared and taken care of today. The Friday event at J. Russell Jennings Complex, I was very appreciative of the whole neighborhood showing up. We had a nice turnout, and as Lon has already alluded, absolutely remarkable assistance from everybody. It was just a day to be proud about. Now I have something that you've never heard before, a complaint. I'm contacted by a resident of Pierceville over who is going to enforce the compliance of a zoning board of appeals decision to allow a sand pit when all that Hubers have done is put a little dust or sparkling something or other. Yes.
I can talk to you about that if you want that information, so you can pass it on or not.
I'm just sharing that as we deal with the neighborhood development people and compliance, that this stuff is still out there. And her point was that 2 families have decided to move away from Pierceville for lack of somebody enforcing the trees and the buffer and so on. So anyway, just know that there are disgruntled citizens, taxpayers, whatever. So, okay, that's it, my whole report.
Okay, Linda, do you have, were you contacted with regard to the complaint?
No, I don't know if it's the same person complaining or what the situation is, but I have been in contact with neighborhood development about that situation, and we've been in contact with the Hubers. They have run into a couple of problems, I think probably that a lot of the community has run into, which isn't that they aren't working towards compliance. It's that the date for the people to install the fencing, to install and plant, just keeps getting pushed back because, there's not enough labor
right now. So the Hubers are working on complying with those requirements from BZA, and it's not that they are ignoring them. And they have been contacted by neighborhood planning to make sure that they're taking steps to comply with those requirements. So it is on my radar, and it is on neighborhood development radar to make sure that those get complied with. But right now, that was kind of what it sounded like the holdup was that they did have people in line to put the fencing up and to plant the trees, but that the labor to actually accomplish those things had been delayed. So hopefully in the next, over this summer, that does get taken care of.
Thank you.
And my editorial comment is, before they plant the trees, they need to have their watering system figured out, because that's what TP&L did not have figured out, and they're replanting, or needing to replant trees for about the third or fourth time, so I hope they get that figured out. And one of the people moving from Pierceville was moving to Ingalls, and they contacted Gray County, and Gray County informed them, we do have some codes over here too that you're gonna have to abide by, so they know that they're gonna have rules there in Gray County as well as what they would have had in Finney County. So with that, Bob.
Well, the planning commission was kind of short for a change, about a 30-minute deal. As you can tell, we didn't have a lot of activity from them. Compass, we get the month off. They take June off as their board meetings because of harvest and a lot of the people who attend. On the governance, I've been trying to learn more and more, and I've been going to the website, and we need to pay a little more attention to our website. I was trying to do a little research as I was studying for the budget to look at last year's. I went to the website and pulled up budget, and it was a 2021 budget instead of the 2022. I don't know who does that, but if we could get that up to date, that'd be really good. The other thing that came forth today, I think, as we talked about employees and dollars and wages and everything else, I think it was mentioned both by Dave and by the chairman that there's more to it than wages. And so I think we talked back in December about having someone come in and look over our county. Who are we? What are we trying to do? And what's it like for our employees? And to try to get a working relationship with them. And it costs money. And maybe it's now, when we're talking about budgets, that we have to include an item like that if we're going to do it. But I still think it's absolutely important to try to figure out who we are and what we're trying to be. And I think it's money that's going to be well spent if we do something like that. So those are my thoughts. And, you know, we got a little bit more work to do on the budget. We got a lot of work to do. Sooner or later, we have to figure out what it's going to cost to be in business in Finney County. And I look forward to finishing that. Thanks.
Thank you, Bob. Larry?
Oh, okay. First of all, you know, Paul and the emergency management folks did a great job, because 2 weeks ago, I started getting calls on Saturday night that said, we've got a problem. And, you know, at first I didn't think much about it. And then Sunday morning, they continued. And I thought, whoa, this might be serious. And then Monday, when I finally got a hold of Paul and Robert helped me get things set up, and we had to get the landfill to open up for all these dead cattle that died over the weekend. And I don't know what other counties did, but I got several calls back from the feed yards appreciating the work that we had got done, because they were pleased that we took care of this, because it's one of those problems that is very time sensitive. Mm-hmm. It's not going to rectify it. So it's not like a blizzard where they'll stay stored for a while. So got that taken care of. Had a Workforce One meeting that was pretty interesting, and we talked about budgets. And one of the things they did, they gave all their staff people a 5% increase across the board. Also, they gave us some numbers. The median age in Finney County is 31 years of age versus like Seward County, which is 29. So, you know, those are kind of interesting stats. And that the labor force, their area, Workforce One takes care of Area 1, which is everything from Wallace County clear to Reno County, so it's pretty well everything in western Kansas. But their labor force has declined by 3,300 people, which is kind of, you know, I thought maybe our population was growing, but it's not at that time. But they did say the largest group in their survey was the age of 10 to 14. So it's good that got possibilities.
Bullpen I was talking about.
Yeah. So it was a good meeting. Also, no senior center meeting this month. I guess they moved it to next month. Let me see what else. Oh, I attended lots of Beef Empire Day events and didn't get down to the park in time for the early right after the parade, but everybody said it went real well, and the junior college did a great job of preparing the meat, or the beef battalion, All-American Beef Battalion prepared the meat. It was really good. Went to several political fundraisers, one for Derek Schmidt and one for Scott Schwab. And other than that, that's about it.
Larry, if you don't mind, and I assume we're still online and stuff too, but there's so much misinformation out there about the cattle disaster, if you will. And yes, you're right. In the summertime, that's got to be taken care of immediately, where in the wintertime, maybe not so much. But I've had several people come up to me and say, well, is this something that's just going to happen every so often? Is it because the feedlots are too big and all this? And then, of course, the internet blew up with conspiracies and food chain and all that other stuff. But just from a cattleman's perspective, how would you characterize this disaster?
Well, it was an unusual event for us because that's why the feed yards are here in western Kansas, because we're dry, relative low humidity, low rainfall, and the wind always blows. Well, three of those events, three things that happened. Temperatures went up, it rained south of us, you know, the night before, so their humidity was higher, and the wind, no wind. Absolutely no wind. Most people don't realize cattle don't sweat like you and I. So, you know, they're like a dog. They have to cool through their mouth and nose. And you've got a 1,400-pound steer that's black-hided, and he's standing out in the sun. Guess what? He gets pretty warm pretty quick when there's no breeze. And so, you know, people say, well, you need to install misters. Well, misters compound the problem. And now they do it at the packing plants because they wet them down completely. You know, they have sprinkler systems, you know, that keep them wet. And, but that's not possible in a feed yard. So, you know, it was no, it's not. It happens, you know, it's happened before. But mainly it's usually feed yards that are located east of us where the humidity's higher, not out here. But I think that everybody's handled it pretty well. Granted, you know, some of the social media and some of the videos that got out there were a little disturbing, but I can see where people would, you know, they can do a lot of things with pictures and extract ideas.
Well, and everything you said is absolutely true about the factors and so forth, and I can attest that there was absolutely no breeze that day and higher humidity, because I went through two T-shirts working that day, and there was no breath of air, so I can imagine what those cattle were feeling out there in the feedlots. Well, thank you for those reports. A couple of things that I want to add to the conversation here today. You should have had at your place today this, and I would ask that you keep this in front of you. I have handed out to you before the mandated services, which is the top one, but the other two pieces, the administration arm of the state and locally determined services, was something added by KAC, and it's what they're using for their training of new commissioners and so forth. And I just think it's really good information to have in front of us whenever we're talking about budgets or services a department offers or whatever it might be. So I asked, who'd I ask? Dory or somebody to have that in front of us, and I would ask that you keep it in your eyesight as well. Secondly, we did not, we skipped over board governance today because I look at that as a continuation primarily of our goal setting, and I knew we weren't going to have time today with all the budget stuff. And so, third thing, I would like to suggest to us to consider having another meeting in July in addition to our two scheduled ones. So, July 5th is our regularly scheduled meeting, first one in July, and Larry, I don't recall, was that the one you were probably not going to be? Okay.
I haven't
No,
talked
that's,
to the person in charge yet.
and that's okay. I've got one of those schedulers at my home as well, so I understand that. But the next one then would be the 18th, I believe. Is that the next?
Yes.
I don't have my calendar up. So in between, though, I would like to suggest that July 11th, we have a special meeting to help with the budget and so forth, but also to continue our goal-setting conversation, because I think with that third meeting in July, we can do both of those. So is there any opposition to having a third meeting in July on July 11th? Just to keep it kind of in tune with our Monday calendars.
No skin off my nose, but I do have a hearing that may take most of the morning already scheduled at that time, so I may not be available.
Okay, I appreciate knowing that, but yeah, it'll be budget and goal setting, so should not interfere. Any opposition to that? So let's schedule a third meeting in July, and I hope that Dwayne is done with wheat harvest by then, and he can join us for all the July meetings. And well, it'll be
I'm sorry, will this be a work session or a special session?
well, I would call it special session, I guess. I don't know how we need to term it. It'll be to continue our budget discussion from July 5th, you know, and things that we might need to kind of clean up, because then on the 18th, we need to finalize everything. But also, it will include a continuation of our goal-setting conversation. So, however it should be termed, I have no qualms, special or work session. There'll probably be possibly, not probably, possibly be some decisions made with regard to the goal setting. So if that needs to be special session, because there could be decisions made.
8:30?
8:30, yes, I'm sorry, yes, 8:30. Another thing, we will not have an executive session today. That need has gone away, and so we will not have that. And the last thing is just for your information. I think it's the last thing. Oh, no, two last things. Dory and I talked briefly, on our agenda today, we had department monthly reports, and we only had one department report in our packet. Dory and I talked, based on some conversation we were having prior to the meeting, that those reports maybe need to have a template, if you will, on what needs, they can have, on the one that's on your screen right now, the fairgrounds, there's some revenue and so forth. But maybe there needs to be a financial, maybe one with regard to goals, maybe one regard to accomplishments, maybe some type of a template to give each department a little bit of standardization so that we can go through them and kind of know what they're going to be telling us. But most importantly, that each one of them could monthly give us some financial information, just a quick summary. 80% of budget, 50% of budget, over budget, those kind of things. So Dory and I briefly talked about it, and Robert and Dory and I will work a little bit more on what do we ask the departments to put in those reports. And then finally, Robert and I are scheduled to meet with Trent from Neighborhood Development, and I believe Danielle has been invited from the city to join us in that conversation. And we're going to be talking about code enforcement, and we can talk about a couple of the specific things that have been brought forward, but also getting ready to discuss in the future, what do we need to do to revise our comprehensive plan and so forth as we move forward, because we don't want to have more waivers than we have standard use of the rules and regs. And in some cases, I get the feeling sometimes that, or sense that we may have more waivers granted than standardization. So we're going to have a conversation about that and a couple of other things that involve neighborhood development, and we plan to do that this week. Oh, and then with regard to future meetings, and then Robert and I do plan to visit with Micah from the chamber and Roxanne from CVB with regard to the convention conference question, and to Bob's point during our one meeting we had the other day, yes, if things come from that, you know, we'll bring those to each of the boards, to all of the different boards that are affected. But at this point, it's just been some preliminary discussions. So. That upcoming meeting thing just came up here, but that July 6th looks like a incorrect date on our next meeting. It said, the screen before that, it said July 6th or something. Yeah, it should be Tuesday, July 5th, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
Yeah. Huh? I know, it's right one place, but I just want to make sure somebody doesn't see that.
It's a test to see if you really read this stuff.
Yeah. Okay, anything else for the good of the cause? If not, we're adjourned until